regardless, at this point, it is definitely well past time that we got started. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen as I have been doing. But the very first question is just, where did everyone end up on their stuff? I know that at the end of last session, we were working on getting the movement. Is that zoomed in enough for those who are looking at the screen?
That's good to me.
Okay, so we were working on the movement. I know that we hit a little bit of a snag at the end there where we were trying to deal with whatever was causing Quorum Studio to crash for a couple of people. At this point, has everyone gone into the press key and release key actions and set up the movement in all 4 directions?
Yeah, I just
I
want
have
to
to
make sure
finish
that
the release key. Press key is done.
Yeah, I have both. I just wanted to make sure that I have the release key correct.
Sure.
So I'm assuming I can basically copy and paste what I have in press key.
Yep.
And just set all the values for the vector to 0.
Yep.
Isn't that what we did initially?
Yep. If you do that, then that runs into some issues as we saw.
Yeah.
But that's where we're starting from. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And before we move on to the next portion of our lesson, where we're going to be placing some objects in the game so that we can actually go and start collecting them. Or actually, I might be moving a little ahead here. I think that yeah, that's what we're doing
actually multitasking with grandkids yesterday. I'm finally done for the week. Couldn't get it all, but I'm sure I can figure it out and get.
Well, I'll tell you what. Normally, we have the Git repository that's up so that you can use that to get caught up to wherever we are expected to go. But with the advanced track, we've been kind of going a little bit in our own separate direction, hitting some of the more advanced features, like rather than just using the like set force and stuff, playing with linear velocity and whatnot. I can give you guys the content of this file, or even just give you guys the file straight out if we'd like to use that as our starting point.
Oh yeah, dude. You could always just toss that on Slack.
Yeah. What do you think? Should I just post the raw text or the actual file?
Whatever.
Raw text is fine with me.
I would recommend, if anyone's going to be copying and pasting that from Slack, putting the file up. The encoding, I've done that, and the encoding of whatever Slack does not copy over well.
Seems right.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. I'll put this up on Slack before we get started then. I'm going to give you guys the main.quorum file to drop into your project. Or alternatively, you could open this and copy paste it from elsewhere. All right.
William.
Yes.
On the list key coding, instead of separating if, else if,
yeah,
I just took care of it by just if even key code equal even left,
yep.
Or even key code equals even right,
yeah,
or that kind of stuff. And then because it's practically the inside of the if statement is,
yeah, each of these is exactly the same inside the if statement, right? So that's totally reasonable that you would want to do that instead. Okay. The one thing I will say is that with what we're about to do next, it's useful to keep these separated into the left, right, and up, down, because I want to go ahead and do what we were talking about earlier, where we can sort of set up the diagonal movement so that it doesn't, pressing one key doesn't mess with your other movement keys. So I'm going to start by doing that. I'm going to start also by, I'm going to turn on my screen reader here.
Out of curiosity, are we going to get to like adding accessibility, sound effects and stuff into this?
That's today.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that as part of our work today. And actually, if we want to, we could even do that before we start placing items in the scene, because it is sort of, we've gone a long time without actually making this game accessible in any way. And it's really high time that we fix that.
Oh, all right. I guess the triggers and stuff are today. Oh no, there's some music today and more tomorrow and spatial sound tomorrow. So yeah, we're getting there though.
I think that, barring objections from you, Stefik, I think that we're going to just jump the tracks a little bit. And I think that we should put in some accessibility so you can actually start seeing what's going on in your game.
Oh, no, you guys do you. That's whatever works for best for this group. I don't want to intrude, so.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's set up the diagonal movement, and then we'll do that next. We'll go ahead and get some accessibility in here. For the diagonal movement, does anyone remember what I said the way that we were going to do that was? It was at the very end of last session.
You had to get the vector value from somewhere else, right?
Get the
Or get X to
velocity
get Y.
using
Yep.
get velocity. I have
That's
done
right.
that for linear movement as well.
Sorry, say that again.
I did the get velocity thing for linear movement also.
Oh, yep. And that's what we're going to be doing here. So
I can show you the code. You talk about it, I'll show you what I've done.
yeah, sure. You want to share screen and show what you got?
Okay. Wait.
So while Pranav is bringing that up, what he said is exactly correct. So we are going to be getting the linear velocity value from the player. We're going to have that in a vector that we can use. And we are going to, whenever we set that new vector that we're going to put on the player, we are going to change whichever value we want to change, either the X or the Y, right? So if it's like the left key, I want to set that X value, but I don't want to modify the Y value. So I'm going to get the previous Y value. Yeah, I see that Pranav's got it up here now.
Yeah, I've done some additional variable definitions, and you can see.
Yeah, I
Let me
see
know how
you've
to-
got the move X amount, Y amounts,
Yep.
positive and negative.
I thought that was useful in case we have to change something. It's easy to change.
Makes
just
sense.
one.
Yep.
So go ahead and show us your press key action.
My press key. How do
So
you jump
can
from?
Control Alt up and down will jump you between actions.
Control. I love this.
You love what?
The press jumping from routine to routine.
Dude, I know, right? Like that, we put that feature in because of a study on people that are blind. I use that feature every day, all day long.
Yeah, I use that all the time too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Dude, did you know you can also jump by scope inside and outside of if statements?
I
Oh, I
know
saw
that.
that.
What's the keystroke? I forget.
Control Alt Left Right. I'm sorry,
Oh.
I'm totally bombarding your meeting, but it's just like
That's good. No, we need that.
No, this is useful information. I forgot it.
Because I got an EOF error and then I had to count ends.
Yep, exactly. And that's what the study by Katie Baker shows, that exact kind of thing people run into. And so these kind of keystrokes, anyway, yes, this is why we base decisions on evidence, right? So
Yes.
anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So as far as getting the diagonal movement in here, what we see is that Pranav he's made the vector 2 and he's assigning the linear velocity the player already has to that variable. And then inside the if statements, rather than setting both the values, the X and the Y, he's only setting the one that he wants to change. And so for the other value, it retains the value that it had previously because we got this from the player, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put on my side, I'm going to end up basically just using Pranav's code. But I encourage everyone to do the same while we are putting this all together here.
Does that mean we also need to go ahead and make those integer variables as well?
You do not need to do that, but what Pranav said is totally on point. If you make them as variables, then if you want to change those values, you just have to go to the one variable and change it rather than going finding all the places in the code where it lives.
Okay, cool.
So it can be convenient, but it's not necessary. I'm going to go ahead and do that on my side as well.
So
And
Miss
Pranav,
Wo-
you put that up under which part?
Wait, so let me do something. Can I share the screen reader?
Yeah, when you share screen, you need to
Yes.
check the share computer sound button or whatever it's labeled as.
Let me do that once again. I'll show you my press key routine.
That would be helpful.
But yeah, this was in press key and release key are the two places we're going to be modifying this.
Option button. Quorum studio. Quorum studio.
Okay.
Action update number second end. Action press key keyboard event end. Vector to VCT. VCT current get linear velocity. Event current key event current left. VCT current set X move X amount negative. Current set linear velocity VCT. Else event current key event current right. VCT current set X move X amount positive. Current set linear velocity VCT. Else event current key event current up. VCT current set X move Y amount positive. Current set linear velocity VCT. Else if empty colon key event colon down. VCT colon set X move Y amount negative. The colon set linear velocity VCT. End. Blank.
Okay, is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Unless what? So what are you doing up at the top? So you have vector 2 equals, I think you said to VCT.
Get linear
and
velocity.
Get
So
linear
It'll be
velocity
the player
off of-
variable get linear velocity.
Got it. Okay.
Meeting controls.
And is
with
that getting the vector?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
getting the vector.
that's returning a vector 2 value.
Okay, and then I can say what, get X or get Y?
Yeah, you can use get X or get Y, and you can also, on the vector, you can set X or set Y, so you only set one of those two values.
Got it.
So the
be
way
careful,
that...
it's, sorry, capital S, capital X.
Got it.
Audio settings. Drop stop my video setting. Open partition. New share button. Pause share button. Annotate button. Remote control drop down. Bottom. Stop share button. Space.
Saying player not found. I'm wondering if I need to set something that I might have missed out on yesterday.
Oh,
I
that's a good
put
point.
Player on
So,
the screen, but
yeah, in my particular scene, I had gone to the player character, and using the properties window, I changed its name to player.
Okay.
You can either go do that, or you can set the name that's in the code to be whatever the name of
I'll
your...
just change it to player.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest thing to do.
Is there any other setting that I needed to change within that?
No, that's the only thing you should have to change in your scene.
Okay.
William, would you talk me through about that? You know, the diagonal movement, getting the linear velocity and stuff like that.
Sure.
Can you show the
Yeah, so
screen?
let me go ahead and I'm going to show my screen again. I will also pop open the screen reader again. All right, so I already have it. I'm going to quickly just run the program and just show that it works. On my unfortunately still inaccessible game, if I am holding down 2 arrow keys, it should correctly move me along the diagonals now. And if I start moving in a cardinal direction that's orthogonal, or basically just if I press left and then also up, for example, I'm no longer like cutting off one of my 2 directions of movement, right? So in terms of the actual code, I have my press key action where at the top of it, I now have the vector that I have. I'm not making a new one anymore. Instead, I'm getting the existing one from the player using that player colon get linear velocity.
Yep.
And then inside the if statements, instead of setting both the X and Y, I'm only setting the X if it's left or right. And I'm only setting the Y if it's down or up.
So I noticed that the way that I've got mine set up is if I release any key, it just sets all of the velocities to 0 immediately.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing that I've changed down here in the release key.
So that makes it, if you're going right to start with, and then hit up with it, it's gonna just go up or right because the added velocity to the y-axis. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have this x value that we're assigning, but the or sorry, when you start moving up and you're already moving left or right, you keep the x value that you already had, so it keeps that speed, and then the y value gets placed on the y speed, and you maintain your x, but you have the new y velocity, right?
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
So, as to Adam's question, the other thing that I've done in my code is I've taken a cue from Co, and in my release key, I'm using the OR operator in my if statements to check one of 2 conditions now. So either I am checking to see the event is the left or right key, or alternatively, I do something different if it's left or right, or if it is up or down. But if it's left or if it's right, I do the same thing. If it's up or if it's down, I do the same thing. And all that I'm doing is the exact same thing that I did before. I am getting the vector I'm getting the linear velocity vector from the player, and then if it's left or right, I set the x. I set the x to 0, and if it is up or down, we set the y to 0.
Okay.
So,
So I'll give you guys a minute to get this plugged into your own code.
Got it.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to keep this up, and you guys can continue programming on this. But the next question I want to figure out, the next thing I want to address is the question of accessibility. In our game, we have this top-down RPG style map and movement. And currently, if you run the game, we are providing no information at all to the user, right? If you are using a screen reader, if you aren't able to look at the screen, you just don't have any information to work with. So the question is, how do we change that? What do we want to do to make it accessible? Before we even deal with the technical question of like what's the code looks like, we have to figure out what even is the design of the accessibility, right?
I mean, do we just want sounds when you hit certain things, like a certain sound if you hit a tree, certain sound if you hit water?
Sure, that's an option. We could use audio cues to tell you when you are running into certain things. Do we have any other ideas?
I'm not quite sure, but you know, if we add the, you know, like a up, right kind of sound to the, you know, arrow keys, that's I don't know, it might be too much. You know?
So I'll tell you, I've seen a couple different navigation systems for accessibility for like top-down stuff. Relatively easy, although you need the algorithm to do it, is using like Dijkstra's algorithm so that you're getting a pathfinding to specific objects on the map. You have to have the algorithm to do it, but you know, you can lay it over the top of anything. Like someone wrote like Lewis scripts for Pokemon Crystal, which is pretty cool, and they just used Dijkstra's algorithm to get pathfinding to all the objects on the map. The other that I've seen that I really liked was it used different sounds for the walls. So it was like as you approach the north wall, it would play one sound. As you approach the east wall, it would play another sound, and it kind of helped give you some a little bit of orientation. And you'd have as you move your character forward, it would make footsteps noises. So that you knew that you are moving.
Sure.
through space. Yeah.
So a bunch of different interesting ideas here.
And the other problem for us is, at least for me, my map is scattered. It's not particularly regular. So somewhere down the line, I need a lookup function of some kind so I can walk, and I need to know that I'm walking. But what also happens is I need to know if there is anything in that direction. I haven't really built a surrounding wall. I've got objects all over the place.
Right.
So what I've seen there is if there is a particular object in a game that you need to find, they give you a device in the game, and you switch that on and and it beeps at you as you get closer to the object.
Like swamp or something.
Something like that. Doom has that thing. It has that whatever thing. Of course, the device's battery keeps running down, but that's separate.
Yeah.
So, am I missing something if it says that it can't find set X or set Y?
Set X or set Y. So are you calling this on the vector object?
Yes. Yes.
It
says I could not find an action named set Y.
If we want to do something like that, besides the actual algorithm itself, what would we need in order to make that work for our game?
You have to map. Well, you have to it has to be able to search the map and be able to identify all the objects on the map. And
right.
You have to be able to tie those objects to the things that you want to be able to get to.
Yeah, for sure. We'd have to be able to identify which things are actually worth navigating to with the algorithm, so that it can actually give you paths, not to just random points in space, but to things that matter, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we'd have to take some time. We'd have to build that out. I would also argue that the way that our map is built is not ideal for something like using Dijkstra's algorithm. Not because you can't use, you could use pathfinding algorithms for 3D space in general, but with our map, because we are not well constrained to the grid like you would be in something like Pokemon, it's easier to imagine how the movement works if you are in grid space 0, 0, or you're in grid space 0, 1, right? What's more difficult is, even though we've been using the grid to build our scene, the player character is actually smoothly interpolating between all of the different portions of the map. So the grid, as far as that would be concerned, unless we changed our movement somehow, which we could do if we wanted, the grid is actually 800 by 600 for our default sized canvas, compared to something more constrained. We could still totally do it, but we would have to put some thought into how not just the map is built, but we might have to consider how the movement of our game is built as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I guess, at the beginning, and then we use those tiles, different types of tiles, right?
Yeah.
So kind of idea is that, can we assign each tile or the bunch of the same type of tiles some kind of sound effect, like so your character standing on the grassland is gonna trigger the kind of grassland walking sound.
Yep.
And then I'm on my map, I have a grassland, darkland, and then grass dot mixed land and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then if we can assign different sound effect to those terrains, it might be, it will be more interesting for the the users that's for on all spectrum.
Yeah, for sure. This is something that stuff like that is not just useful for accessibility, but it's useful for anyone who's playing the game, because it makes the entire game feel more immersive, and it makes it more responsive overall, right?
Yeah.
And this is something I remember that I think it was Tim that we were talking about this with, where it's this question of, can I use the scene editor to attach sounds directly to the tiles for stuff like walking around on them? And right now the answer is no, as far as the scene editor is concerned, right? But that is something that we could do with code. We could write some code that we have some audio, we have it loaded, and we check to see where is the player moving around, and when they move around, play different sounds based on whatever tiles they're on top of.
Nice.
So in order to do that, what would we need to do in terms of code?
You'd have to get your hands on the map, the scene itself somehow.
Yep.
So that you can check what square that player is on.
Yep, so that's part of it. We would have to get the actual scene itself. And we can do that if we want to pull out the layer where all of these items have been added to. We can get all of the items that are on there. We would have to do something with those items in order to check to see where we're stepping. The simplest thing to do would be whenever we're walking, grab every item that's in the scene, look through all of them, figure out which ones we overlap with, play a different sound depending on which one we are, right?
Right.
That's not exactly the most high performance algorithm that's out there, for sure, but at the same time, the sort of stuff we're doing right now, that's maybe okay. We're not making humongous maps at the scale of like a AAA game. We're making something small, so that's possible.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
At the moment, when you're navigating around on the map, can you just walk right off the edge of the map? Like, are there
Yes.
borders to it?
No, there are no borders. So, and that's intentional, right? Because you could make a game where the camera will move with you, in which case you could just have a map that extends off the edges of the default starting camera, right?
But I mean, like, so as you mentioned, like, I mean, we use the map editor or the scene editor. We lay out a bunch of tiles. Can you walk outside the range of the tiles that we have laid out?
Yes, you
like
can. Nothing will stop you from walking outside of that.
Okay.
And
there's no borders.
So, and let's consider why that would be too. In the game right now, what sort of things are we using to move our character around? It's the physics system, right? So it's just you have a character and they are moving based on the physics that we are applying to it to push it around in different directions. And what things we have that keep the character from actually moving through different objects? It's not because we're doing anything special where the system is checking to make sure you're on a tile or anything. Literally all we have is we have some tiles that are physics objects that are solid and you can run into them and that will stop you, right? But otherwise, the system is not doing anything to make sure you're stuck on top of a tile. Because of that, if you have no tiles at all, that's just empty space. And so physics can continue to push your object through empty space.
The other thing to remember too is that default that you have for the image that shows up on the screen, that's just the default camera position. So if you made a map that was far beyond that and then moved the camera, you would want that too.
Yeah. For this reason, I do recommend that in my personal scene, I'm going to bring that up here. My personal scene, the entire thing is an island and is surrounded on all sides by water tiles. These water tiles are just by default physics-enabled objects, so you can't walk through them. So in my particular game, you can't walk off the edge because my map has been designed that way, right?
You know what you could do?
Objects around you created your own border.
Yeah, exactly.
By using water.
Yep.
Got it. So you could do something similar if you wanted to put, I don't know, bushes around or something.
Absolutely. You
or
could put
rock or something and add.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
So what you could do if we have these tiles, the simplest thing would be, these are all physics objects.
Yep.
And if we set collision on them, all we need to do is grab the collision event, see what's colliding with what, and then play a sound. Problem solved.
That's perfect. So I'm really happy that we got to this one because all of these suggestions we've had for accessibility so far are entirely reasonable accessibility suggestions and things that would make the game better, right? But there are also things that are more involved than I want to do right now because I want to have something that we can do relatively quickly as a first step just so we can have something in the game so you can start doing something with the environment, right? This is something that we can do. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to have that a lot of these suggestions you would really layer on top of each other, right? If you had something that gave you footsteps when you're walking on grass or dirt or water or whatever, that's something that you would have in the game probably in addition to something that tells you you've run into something, you have some kind of like collision sound, or you might have that on top of some code that allows you to pathfind your way to objects, or you have a radar that's telling you like giving you pings as you draw closer to something. Because even if you're getting this information that you're getting closer to something, you still need to know if you're running into something along the way. You don't want to be just kind of stuck because you don't know there's a wall between you and whatever it's pinging, right? So I expect that over the course of the remaining sessions, this is something that we're going to build up accessibility features as we find that we want them and that we need them. But the first step that I want to hit is exactly what you're talking about right now, Pranav, which is let's go ahead, let's use the collision managing system in Quorum, and let's build up a system just to tell you if you run into something with the player. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go back to main.quorum. So in order to start listening for collisions, I need to use the code that supports that. Similar to how we built up our stuff to listen for keyboard events, we need to listen for collision events now. So before I start writing any code, what would be the way that I do that? What do you guys think I should do in order to start supporting that?
It's the same way we did with the keyboard listener, that we need to do the collision event and the collision listener.
Right. So The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my smart navigation keys. I'm going to jump up to the class. So right now, we inherit from two things. We are a game, and we are a keyboard listener. We also want to listen for collision events, so I'm going to add an extra thing here. So I've just added to the end of this code, class main is game, comma, keyboard listener, comma, collision listener 2D. That's the new line. And the D in 2D is capitalized. I also needed a use statement for that, so I used Alt-Enter. For Pranav and Timothy, I know Alt-Enter was not working for you yesterday. I think that was because you had compiler errors. So go ahead and see if the Alt-Enter works for you now.
Oh, yeah. Alt-Enter does not give you back a hint result if you have a compiler error in the file. And the reason for that is because it can't. Because the compiler says, well, I'm not sure whether I'm going to give you the right answer or not. So we only return back a hint if we can guarantee mathematically that it's not going to cause a bug. That's the idea.
How does one spell collision? I need to verify that.
It is
C-O-double-L-I?
C-O-L-L, yeah, C-O-double-L-I-S-I-O-N.
Oh, yeah. 2D. No.
You said that it's collision manager?
Collision listener 2D.
Oh, listener 2D.
And I'll go ahead, I'll put the text in the Zoom chat as well here.
Well, I'm sure loving that Alt-Enter.
Yeah, it's great.
That's handy, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
I use that key about 400 billion times per day.
Yeah, that's
Very
great.
useful. I actually found something weird about it just now. I did Alt-Enter to add the use statement at the top, but then it had another little yellow box right above that where we have the end comment, and it had me do Alt-Enter again, and it added the same use statement a second time.
Oh, that's weird.
It was weird. It happened to me yesterday. I thought that was just some random error, but I guess it happened again now.
It's got to be a bug. If you can document exactly how I reproduce it, I'll take a look.
All right, I'm not sure if it'll actually happen again. I'm going to try and delete that and then see if I can make it happen again.
I mean, no matter what the bug is, I will blame the user anyway. So, you know, just to be clear. But it is possible.
I'm a noob, so that's acceptable. I'll take it.
The truth is that like that's possible. I don't know. I mean, stranger things, right? So, sorry.
So at this point, I have added collision listener 2D to the inheritance structure of my class. So I am now able to use the collision listener actions. Now for the keyboard listener, there was one extra line of black magic that we needed to add somewhere before we even did the actions. Does anyone remember what that was?
Yeah, and create game.
Yeah, add collision listener, I'm guessing is what we need.
Brackets me.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So for the create game, I need to add an extra line of code. It would help if I typed it right. If I type it right. So we need to add this line of code, add collision listener, left paren, me, right paren.
It's not collision listener 2D.
No, and I actually just made that typo myself. I just tried to add that, and that does not compile. So that's a good question, though. So I could make a collision listener 2D. There's also a collision listener 3D. So why is it that this line of code, I have this action, add collision listener, and I'm giving it a 2D collision listener, but what if I was a 3D collision listener, right? Shouldn't I have to have two different names for these two different types of things I could give it?
I think that it would they'd work the same. As far as actions that are called from the game, at least.
Yep. So in terms of actions, it is possible to have two actions with the same name that take different parameters. which is what happens here. If you have a collision listener 3D, you call the same thing and you just pass it a collision listener 3D instead of 2D, and it will accept that instead.
Oh, so Quorum does support overloading.
Yes.
Very cool.
So because you defined it as 2D earlier, it just takes care of that?
Yep.
And knows that it's 2D from that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Or from the parameter.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So at this point, we have the class that we needed to inherit from. We have this line of black magic that basically makes sure that we're going to get the events. Now we need to actually add the actions. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of my file. You can do this anywhere in your file just so long as it's not inside of another action. But I like to add it to the bottom as I'm adding new stuff. I'm going to add a new action. And it's going to be begin collision. And that takes a collision event 2D, which we will need a use statement for that as well, so I'm going to use Alt-Enter. And so this is the line. And I've already gone ahead and added the end that corresponds to it. It's a habit I try and get into, is just whenever I add to action, I also add it to end immediately. Same with if statements or anything else that uses it.
Because there's screen reader use, you might as well just dump it into Zoom instead of saying this is the line, right? So.
Well, I'm still coming through with the screen reader, right? Oh.
And
I didn't
by the way,
realize
the
Alt-Enter
I've been trying to use the screen reader.
Action begin collision. Collision event 2D event. Selected.
Well,
and by the way, Alt-Enter is working for me. So
good.
All right.
And I will say, I do appreciate you adding that. I don't know, I can't survive without that and Eclipse and like Spring Boot and stuff.
I know, me too, man.
Yeah, we're never exactly thrilled when we have to go manually type the use statements either. That's an everybody feature.
That's one of the first ones I added. Drives me nuts, you know.
So, as we were saying before, one of the things that we could do here is we could add different sounds based on the different things we're running into. And that would be a really good and immersive way to give that information to the player. It's also something that's useful for everybody who's playing, right? If I am a sighted user, it still feels good to have the environment respond in natural ways as I'm navigating it. Audio feedback is a good part of that. That being said, one of the things that we'd have to do in order to support that is go grab a bunch of sounds from somewhere, probably go online and find some public domain or open source sounds, which we can totally do. But I want to use this instead as an opportunity to talk about some of the ways that Quorum will allow us to convey this information using either speech or sending a message directly to the screen reader. So what are the obvious ways for those of us who have used Quorum before in the advanced group? What's the obvious way that I could announce this to the
you would
user?
use the say command.
Yeah, so I could just use a say statement.
Action begin collision, blank.
And so I'm going to, in my begin collision right now, I'm just going to add a say statement.
What, space, quote, A-L-R-F-D, quote.
Actually, change this to something
World select
more meaningful than hello world.
H selected, N.
So right now I just have
Line
in my
feed.
code,
Say collision.
if a collision occurs, it's just going to say collision aloud. I'm going to run this, and this is not what we're actually going to want for obvious reasons, and also some not obvious reasons possibly. Let me go ahead and run this.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ game window.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my character down into the water that's on the southern side of my island.
Collision. Collision.
So it's not obvious from the speech, but visually what just occurred there is when it spoke that collision aloud, my character stopped responding. I could not move at all. And there's a really good reason for this. The say statement is blocking. Until the say statement completes, no other code is executing, which includes all of my code to move my character. Because of this, the say statements are not really very useful for games. They're more useful for like, I am using this as part of my output for like my hello world, or I'm doing something as a text-based application and I want to make sure I'm speaking something in the text-to-speech and not going to overwrite the currently executing speech by saying more stuff, right? So since that's not going to be ideal for us, we're going to want to do some other stuff in order to announce that aloud. The other thing that we want to do is, in my say statement there, all I said was collision, which is really not helpful. I have no idea what I collided with. And another thing that might not be obvious from this code, in this particular example, the only thing that's moving around to collide with other stuff is the player. But there could be other things in the game that could be colliding, right? I could have NPCs that are walking around, running into things. I could have bullets that are flying around if I'm doing like a bullet hell style game, or different kinds of physics objects that are just moving around the world. Those could all be colliding too, and those would trigger the event the exact same way, right? So let's go ahead and address both of those issues. The first thing we should do is we should write some codes to figure out what things are colliding. I'm gonna go ahead and close the game.
Quorum Studio 2.0.1 window.
I'm gonna go ahead and remove this say statement.
Say collision. End unselected.
And from here, I am going to add some code to handle some of the stuff in the game. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an item2D.
ITM2D space TM.
I'm just going to call it item, but you could call it whatever else. The important thing is this variable is going to represent whatever we're running into that is not the player.
Space equals UD ED.
Because I'm going to be getting this from the event that's being passed into the action, I'm going to start by setting this variable to undefined.
Item2D item equals undefined selected.
So I'm going to assign something to this in a moment, but I'm not doing it yet. And there's a good reason for this. Inside the collision event 2D,
line feed.
I'm going to just open it up and we'll see if code completion will play with that.
Epsilon number 1 of 70.
Okay, so there's a few different things that are in here. I'm going to type get and see what the
get child
are.
in T T E G get child in code tab get child index A.
Okay, so there are a few different things according to code completion that I can use to get values from this, and a bunch of these are not really important to us. Stuff like get child index A,
get child index B,
get
integer
child
2 of
index
15.
B,
get collision points,
get the,
local collision points 2D 3 of 15.
Getting the collision points. A bunch of these things are things that are used by the physics system, but there is something in here that we do actually care about, and that is
get item A, item 2D 6 of 15. Get item B, item 2D 7 of 15.
Get item A and get item B are the two events which are the two items which are colliding as part of this collision event. We don't actually know which one is which though. Presumably, the only thing that's moving around in our game right now is the player character. One of these two things, as the game exists right now, is gonna be the player, but we don't know which one. So I'm going to start by, I'm gonna remove this line so I can make it an if statement. So I'm going to
event G selected and unselected.
Delete that. If
space
event
colon G
get item A
right paren space
is equal
space
to
B,
the player,
R, D,
then I will do something.
blank blank.
The alternative is it's not item A, the player is actually item B, and so the other condition is going to be
L E F
else
space
if
T epsilon
get
item A, item 2D, get item B, item 2D 2 of 2.
Get item B
Code tabs tab space B R
is equal to the player. So my conditional now looks like if event get item A equals player, else if event get item B equals player, end.
If event get item A equals player, else if event get item B equals player, end selected.
And so does it make sense what this code is doing so far?
It's just setting up the kind of foolproof condition that, you know, whatever the computer thinks item A or item B is, you're covered, so to speak.
Yeah, so long as one of these two items is the player, we're going to fall into one of these two conditions, right? And so what I'm going to do inside here is
if event get item A equals player, else if event get item B.
In the section that is if event get item A equals player, what I'm going to do is if item A is the player, then what I want to do some stuff with is the other item. So I'm going to say that the item variable I defined before, item
space equals space
event
epsilon G
get item
B, code tabs tab control main dot quorum tab
Quick,
code edit text box item equals
you
event
said
get
to
item B
fix,
selected.
Quorum's crashing for me, and I think it's this colon issue. You said that once I restart it, just try and fix all the
Yeah,
bugs
go
first.
ahead and reopen it and try and just do a build. It'll tell you where your errors are, and then go fix the errors that are up here.
And if it drives people too crazy right now, I can work right now to put out a patch. I hadn't checked it carefully, so I usually try to do that before I push it live to everybody. So because I'm the only one that looked at it. But if it drives you nuts, I can also send you like if you just can't get out of it, I have the installer on my desktop. I can always send you 2.0.2, and then it's just you that is the guinea pig. So that might be okay too.
The other option is that if you want someone to just give you a hand with the errors, we can either take a look at it together, or we can have either Andy or I think Tim Cluthy is in this call, but I can't check.
I'm down to go to a breakout room if you need me to.
Yep.
Yeah, I just ran into the same colon error.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm just gonna get a. Oh, but I can't because I have to. See, that's why, because I have to be on Mac and PC because I got to get multiple versions out at once. And
the workaround, if I remember correctly, is that we just type it up in Notepad and then copy paste. Is that right?
That is
well, you know
another
what?
way that you can do it, but you need to fix those errors anyway before you can run the program. So I would do that.
I tell you what, I'll send both of you 2.02 on Slack, and then you can be the guinea pig. And if it works for you, then great, I'll push it live.
I'm okay with that.
When I changed it to the if-else-if statements, the code completion didn't do it. Is that what you're talking about, or something else?
No,
So
there's a bug that Josh Tubbs found yesterday, that if you have a compiler error in a particular file, when it boots up, and then you type code completion in certain regions of that code, it would cause a crash in Quorum Studio. And I was able to find it last night, reproduce it, and then fix it. But it's kind of esoteric, so nobody on the team ever really noticed. But I did fix it. It's just I haven't had a chance to put up a patch yet for it. So that's something different. In any case.
Yeah. At this point, I do want to continue on the code, but I also want to make sure that we're not leaving people behind, because the farther you are behind, the more it takes to catch up. And so I don't want to, it's not useful to anybody if half the group is not actually like at the same place, because then only half the group is getting anything out of it, right?
Well, that was really irritating. I rebuilt and it said the build was successful, so I was like, oh, okay. And then I tried typing in their colon and it crashed. Okay. So apparently the build was not successful.
I'm uploading the build to you right now, and I'll get the patch out later. We'll put out a patch later today. We were hoping to put in both that accessibility fix and this one, and then the accessibility fix we weren't able to solve immediately. So we kind of, that's our fault, or my fault, I guess. But anyway, and also it doesn't help that I solved the rest of it at like midnight. So, I was like, should I push this live? How on the edge do I want to live? So
you make only the best decisions at midnight. It's fine.
Yeah, that's the problem. So, but I am sending you the 2.02 installer to just your machine, Timothy, and so that should be to you. It's at about 50%. When it hits 100, it'll pop to you, and then you can just uninstall over your current one. That'll fix it. So, I mean, barring I don't screw it up. It's working for me, but who knows?
Yeah, it works on my machine on a t-shirt, and that's the story of my life.
Sorry, go ahead and keep going. But yeah.
So I have filled in one of the two parts of my conditional here with this code to assign the value to this item variable that I have. So if the first item in the collision event is the player, the second item in the event is what I'm going to be storing in my variable. The alternative, if the second item is the player, I need to do the opposite. I need to assign item A to my item variable. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Else blank. And
so the code now looks like, I'll go ahead and select this as a screen here, regional selection.
Item 2D item equals undefined if event get item A equals player item equals event get item B, else if event get item B equals player item equals event get item A.
So
and
literally
selected.
just I have a variable, it's undefined. Check to see if the first item from the collision event is the player. If it is, the second item must be the thing I'm colliding with. Otherwise, if the second item is the player, the first item is the thing I'm colliding with, which I want to find out some information about.
What was your shortcut for reading or for selecting and reading that?
Sorry, say it again.
Was there a shortcut you used to select and read that quickly?
Oh, no, I have the screen reader on and I just selected the selection. I had the cursor in one spot and I just shift clicked on the end of it to select it all at once.
Gotcha.
So the reason
Item 2D
why
item
I care
equals
about getting this item is because now I can get some information about the item and I can use this in what I'm accessibly reporting. So we've just established that the say statement is not a good way to use the text-to-speech to give information to the user in a game because it blocks. But I'm going to use it for right now just to see that we have what we want. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a say statement, say, and I'm going to do item get name.
M, colon, G, N,
this is the same name that we would see in the properties in the scene if we went and selected one of these things. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save and run this.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ
and now,
game
as
window.
I move around, I still don't have any accessibility when I'm just walking around. But if I actually run into something which has physics enabled,
Water
it tells me
177.
what the name of that object is. Water 177 is probably not the best name to give something. This is not the most useful information. It's useless to the player to know that this is the 177th water tile, but it is enough to tell them it is water, right? This is not great, but it's a start. And so we're going to use this to sort of build up on. The next step is going to be to remove the say statement and put in something else that's better. And we have a couple of options for this. One of the options could be that we go pick up some sounds and we make it so that if the tile we run into has a name that includes water, play a watery sound. Or if it's a tree, play something that sounds like running into a tree in some way. But before we do that, let's hit some of the other things that Quorum has to provide us directly to basically just say this to the user. If I wanted to just use the text-to-speech without blocking the game, the way that I could do that is using the speech object.
Quorum Studio 2.0.
I just closed the game. Yeah, I closed the game. I'm back in the text editor here. I'm going to remove this say statement.
Say item get name selected. And unselected.
It's funny that when I delete that, it says the wrong thing to the screen reader about. It doesn't say that it deleted something. It just tells me that it unselected some unrelated text. It's kind of odd. So I'm going to make a speech object here. If I wanted to do this, like to keep it around, I could also put this in a field up at the top of the file. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the action.
F B E E H space S B E E H.
So I have made a speech object, and I've just called it speech.
Speech selected.
You can, of course, name your variable whatever you would like. And with the speech object,
line feed.
I'm going to pop this open, and I'm going to pop open the code completion and just see what's there.
B E E H. Can block. Boolean 1 of 17.
There's a bunch of different things in here about can block, can pause, can resume.
Can pause, can resume, can set speed, can set voice, can set volume. Boolean 6 of 17.
Things that can be used to adjust how the speech is saying stuff using the text-to-speech. And the speech, just like the say statement, is going to say something to you regardless of whether or not you have a screen reader on, right? What I actually want here is I'm going to go ahead and go down.
Equals, get, set pitch, say, text value, Boolean block, 14 of 17.
This function that's here, and this goes into what I was saying before about overloading the actions, or basically having the same action with the same name, but with different parameters you can pass into it. One of the options I have is
say, text value, 13 of 17.
Text value. It just takes text. And if I do that, it will work exactly the same as a say statement. This is actually all a say statement is doing on the back end. It's using the speech to say something.
Hey, one sec. Sorry, just want to let you know, Andy, that it is indeed working.
Okay, good. So the other option that's available to me with the speech object, though, is I can use this other say action.
Say, text value, Boolean block, 14 of 17.
If I use this variant of the say action, it will say whatever text I provide it, and then I can pass it a Boolean value, either true or false. And if it's true, it will block, or otherwise it will pause the code execution until it finishes. This is what the normal say statement does. But if I set it to false, it will start saying something and the code will continue to execute while it's speaking. In other words, this gives you a way to use text-to-speech without blocking up the entire program. So that's what we're going to use for right now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add speech : say,
Can block.
and I'm going to give it the exact same text that I had before, which is going to be the item : get name.
M : G E right paren.
I'm going to save this, I'm going to run it, and let's see what this does.
Build successful in 0 EPIQ game window. Water 152.
So it speaks as I run into things, and importantly, as it does that, I can continue to move around.
Tree base 6. Tree base 7.
There is one downside to this, though, which is that if I were to, example, go all the way down to the southern edge of my island.
Stone 11. Water
I'm going to then
152.
just press and hold my right mouse or right arrow button and just kind of go along this bottom border.
Water 136.
So because it's not blocking, this is why the default say statement blocks, right? Is because we don't want to override or interrupt the speech that's already happening to give you new speech. That might actually be what you want in your game. So it's maybe not unreasonable, because it's annoying that you don't get to hear exactly what it is. It was what something. But at the same time, if I'm running into new things, I probably don't want to wait to be informed of the last thing if I've just hit something new and that something new is important, right? So there's some pros and cons to this. But one of the big things that's going on with this text-to-speech, we could just leave it like this, right? This is something that it's giving you some information. It's more information than you had. You're getting something out of the game now, right? One downside to this is that if you are not using a screen reader, you are sighted, and if this is information that you don't necessarily want the game to be telling you this information, as opposed to something where, like, the idea of, like, you play different sounds for running into different things, that feels pretty good for a user regardless of disability. Having text-to-speech is maybe less useful because it's not immersive in the same way. It's just giving you information, right? We might decide that we want to have this feature either as our sole accessibility feature or as a supplement to something like playing sounds when you run into stuff. And if we want to make it something where we're using the screen reader to convey this information, then we can do this differently. The other advantage of doing this via the screen reader is obviously it will respect what the user's screen reader settings are, right? When we're using the say statement, it's just very slowly telling you water 117 or whatever. If we use the screen reader, it will use the user's preferred voice and speed, whatever their settings are. It'll sound a lot better to them as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close the game again.
Close. Quorum Studio 2.0.1
I am going
window.
to remove the speech and say calls. If you would like to keep those, you can keep them around. One of the things that you could do is you could just comment them out by putting the / at the beginning of the lines. Or alternatively, if you select both of these lines, I can press Control /
X / speech say. Item get nom unselected.
Pressing Control / will immediately just comment out the lines. It's just the hotkey for commenting out.
Hey.
/ line feed.
Yes.
Really quick, can you copy that collision code that you have there into Slack for me so I can catch up?
/ speech speech say. Slack 1 running. Slack Epic Advanced Core. / item 2D end. Message num end. Unselected. Action end.
Yeah, I need that if statement, which was item A, item B.
Yeah, so I've just gone ahead, I've just posted that in the Epic Advanced channel on Slack. It's the entire action.
Open.
Do you want me to post it in Zoom?
Quorum Studio 2.0.1.
Let me, what's the routine name? That's what I need. If
event : get item A equals player.
Okay, that's what I want. Get item A. It's all camel case, right? Or
yes.
all first letters capitalized.
Yep, capital G, capital I, capital A.
Okay.
Quorums.
And so we'll take a moment before we continue. But and actually, before I continue, I'm going to go check.
Firefox 1 run. Making objects good and evil.
Since
Placing
we
characters.
have
Quorum
moved off the schedule here, I need to make sure that I don't get carried away, and we need to make sure that we're still hitting some of the other stuff on the schedule. I think this is a good use of our time.
So I'm running into something weird where I basically did the exact same thing for my code as what you had done. But my speech say object get name. And if I just had it do a line where it was just saying the line that I wanted it to say, it would not work, and there would be some sort of error that would come up.
Quorum programming language.
Whatever line it was. And I was using essentially the exact same format or the exact same code that you had written.
Interesting.
Now,
Do you want to go ahead
stop
and
meeting
just share your screen for a moment so I can see what's going on while we have people putting in the code?
There it is. Okay. Screen share. So I'm gonna uncomment. All right. So I've got action begin collision.
Yep.
And I called my 2D object or my item 2D
Water 1.
object instead of item.
Sure. That's totally fine.
Undefined. Get player or event
Water
get item
55.
A equals player, object equals event get item B, so on and so forth. All of that I think is the exact same format as what you have. And then
Water 68.
to say object get name, and then if I try to run it,
So this is actually something really interesting, and that's actually there's a flaw in my code that I've given you here. So it says that according to this, the error is on line 107. It's right on that speech say call, right? And it says the object being referenced is undefined. So when we look at that code, there are only two objects here, right? It's the speech, which we've just made, so we know that's defined, and it's that object, which you just highlighted, right? The object which starts as undefined. So what is the condition that we could hit that line 107, where we get the name of the object? How could we get there without the object being defined? And this is an open question for anybody.
I don't actually know the answer on that one. So
okay. Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
Sorry, I wasn't listening so well. I was working on something.
I see how it is. That's fine. So there is one condition under which we can get to this code, and it's not defined. If we go through the if statements, we check to see if the first item in the collision is a player, or if the second item in the collision is a player. What we don't check for is what happens if neither of those objects are the player, right? You could have two physics objects which are colliding as soon as your game starts because you place them on top of each other or something like that, or just because things are moving around. There are going to be collisions that could happen in your game that don't involve a player at all, right?
Right.
So there's one other thing that we should do in this code, which is we should somehow guard against this being undefined. And there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could, at the end of our if-else if, we could just add an else statement that says, if the, basically this else is the place where you go if the player is still undefined because neither of the objects were the player. We could just say return now and just exit the action immediately. We don't do any more code. Yeah, exactly as you've typed it.
Okay, let's return now.
So if we do that, then that will make sure that if we are not one of the things involved in the collision, if the player is not one of the things involved in the collision, we just do any of the other code, right?
And then it works. Okay.
Oh, I like your map, by the way. Looks real good.
All right, cool. So it worked. All right.
Yeah, so the alternative is that if we wanted to be able to do stuff where maybe we care about collisions that don't involve the player, we could otherwise change our if, else if to just make sure that we only do that speech calling code if the player was defined by the time that we got to that point, right?
You could also just assign a local player variable, and that way it's like you can, determine whether that player is undefined. So you're setting it to get item A or B based on that condition.
Basically doing the opposite of what we're doing there, right?
Yeah.
Which is it automatically sets it to whatever it is that we want.
Yeah, we just sort of assume one of the two is going to be the player, and we only care about whichever one is not the player, and we're getting that one because that's the mystery to us. But that's because we're taking it as given that one of the two must be the player, right?
Right.
Okay, I can't find get item A.
Let
me show you the code quickly. Yeah, let me.
Yeah, go ahead and share the screen, and we'll take a quick look at it before we continue.
Yeah, it's if I. What? Okay, for a change, Zoom is acting strange. Because I have lost the option. Oh, okay. Share screen.
I will say that although I'm not having any problems with Quorum crashing because of colons, I'm not getting any code completion now.
Not getting any code completion anymore.
Which I mean, guess I'll take that over crashing.
Yeah,
But,
the way that Stepik fixed that particular issue, yeah, it's not. He didn't fix the issue in such a way that it's going to give you code completion. It was that the environment was already in a position where it couldn't give it to you, and it was blowing up instead of just failing silently. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm sitting there looking at that source code on the screen. I assume that's yours. The code completion definitely can't give you information there. So once you fix the compiler error, then it will basically sync back up and say, oh, I know what this class is. I can have some information about it. And then it can go back and do its thing.
I think the code is probably
No.
mine.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
Well, then you know what? That works too. That makes sense.
Pranav, all you're missing is the left-right paren on the function calls here.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about like whenever I type like event or something and press a colon and like it wasn't giving any code completion stuff. So
yeah, if it's desynced because the file
go ahead and do that on item B as well.
Happened, but I could look at your code in the breakout room if you want me to.
Right there,
sure.
Did you want me to move you to a breakout room, or I could, or Tim Cluthy?
Give me a moment. I will unshare and you can share. Just give me a sec.
Oh, okay. Well, I just don't want to capitalize on the time for everybody else too. So.
Looks like
Okay, I've built successfully. I'll stop sharing. All right, that's done.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue. Yeah, Tim, if you're still having issues, if you want to hop into a breakout room, just because it sounds like at this point you just have some compiler errors most likely that just need to be addressed. So that seems like something that you should be able to knock out in a breakout room.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. If you want to toss me into the breakout room too, I can help out.
Cool.
And then I'll make sure that the code we're going to write here, I'll put into the chat. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen again.
Meeting controls window. Quorum.
So in my begin collision code, I am checking to see which of the two items is the player. I'm going to add this line of code that we looked at for Adam's code, which is that
Blank.
just as a safeguard to make sure that we don't accidentally crash the environment, essentially. We're going to add this else statement.
Blank.
And if we get here, that means that neither the things in the collision were the player. And for right now, that means we don't care about it. So I'm going to just say return now.
W.
And all this return now statement does is just says exit the action early. Don't execute any more code. Just be done. Finish. What I'm going to do now is I want to be able to, instead of using the text-to-speech to say the name of whatever we're running into, I want to use the accessibility system to send the message to the screen reader. And as I'm going to give a warning ahead of time, this is the same stuff that we use all over the place in the scene editor in the in Quorum Studio. And so it allows us to send arbitrary messages without regard for the exact specifics of what the screen reader might expect for the sort of structure of your program. But as we've seen, it can be just a little bit temperamental. So it should work fine for what we're doing here. We're not doing anything particularly complicated that's likely to break our stuff. But just as a heads up, this is the stuff we're working with here. So I'm going to start by getting the accessibility manager from the game. So I'm going to
A C C E F I N G R G R.
Make an accessibility manager variable. This is a class we don't have in our program yet, so it needs a use statement. I'm going to use Alt-Enter to get it.
Space.
And I don't want to make a new one. I want to get the one that the game is using. So I'm going to assign the value to this manager of
Equals. Space.
get
T X E
accessibility manager.
Right paren.
So accessibility manager equals get accessibility manager.
Accessibility manager equals get accessibility manager. Selected.
This is just going and telling the game, please give me the object that you use to control access to the screen reader. And once I have that,
Line feed.
I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pop open the manager, I'm going to look at some of its code in the code completion.
G R. Action aborted notification integer. Action complete. Item added item removed notification integer 4 of 30.
So we can see that there's a whole bunch of things here that are related to codes we can send to indicate certain kinds of events. There's a bunch of things in here that are related to the underlying guts of the system where it will send certain things around the accessibility, like whenever you add stuff to the game, it
Add item 9
adds
of 32.
items to the underlying accessibility architecture. What we care about here is
Name changed. Notify. Item. Text value 2 of 3.
what we care about is this notify call. This is the thing that allows us to send arbitrary messages to the screen reader. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this, and it takes two parameters. It takes the item and it takes a value in text. So this is not very intuitive, but the way the underlying screen reader architecture works is certain things in the system send messages, and so that would most commonly be whatever thing is in focus or whatever's changing. If the thing that's being focused is sending the event, the screen reader will read it. So what we're going to do is we're going to notify.
Notify. Item. Text value. Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document manager notify.
Because I want to make sure the screen reader reads this, I'm going to send this exactly whatever is focused. So I'm going to call get focus.
G T F right paren.
And so this is another action that the game has. So we are telling the game engine, whatever item is considered to be focused by the system, this is the thing I want to report a message to the underlying system so that it can send a message to the screen reader.
Comma. Space.
And I'm going to give it some text, and that's going to be the item.
M. Action abort. Get. Right paren.
It's going to be the name of the item. So this is the completed line.
Manager notify. Get focus. Item get name. Selected.
So I realize that this one is just a little bit of black magic. It's not very obvious why it has to work exactly in this way. But with how I've described it, does it sort of make sense?
Yeah, it's not too difficult. It's like screen reader programming. What you're doing is you're sending the currently focused object and the text you want spoken for that focused object.
Yep.
To the screen reader.
Line feed.
So I'm going to
Manager notify.
I'm going to save this. I'm going to run it, and we're going to see what happens.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ game window.
So I'm moving around. I haven't hit anything yet. I'm going to go ahead and run into this tree. Uh-oh. It's not reporting anything. I did mention
I had the same experience with the say statement just now.
Oh, the say statement's not speaking for you?
And then I don't know if it's speaking or not speaking, could be my code, but it's not working when I ran the game. It didn't speak anything.
Quorum Studio 2.
Interesting.
Well, no guarantee. It just could be the
Selected. FO D E D. Build successful in 0.
And now let me change things to this notify call, and then I will show you what's happening.
Max upload. Quorum Studio.
It's unfortunate.
Define selected.
Notify call is not working for me here.
T F right paren.
This is the system that's currently we're trying to fix so we can get the editor to work better for you guys, because it clearly is capable of working since you guys get messages when you have stuff up and it's working, but it's also clearly not quite correct considering how often we've been having issues where it's failing to speak for you guys. So it's odd that this one
is before, but I no longer am now either.
So
do we know what people were doing when they did this? Because that was the thing that was hard to track down yesterday. It's like reproducible test cases are key. Do we know like what people did when this happened?
well, I know what the particular code is, at least in this situation outside of Quorum Studio. Like, I know that this code has a notify call that theoretically should work and does not.
Because when I was playing with this last night, I spent like 6 hours trying to diagnose exactly when it happens. I did find some cases where if you issue a notify call, it would have this behavior. Like you'd send the notify call down to be at a particular focus, and then the that particular thing would then cause the screen reader to stop talking. And you had to reboot NVDA to get it to kick back up again. So you could try kicking NVDA off and on again, and that might work.
0.8.
But I'm not sure.
Exit NVDA dialog. OK button.
And then reader at all, and before it was telling me, and now it's not.
Yeah, that's what I
Welcome
mean.
to NVDA dialog. Welcome. EPIQ game.
So if you don't have a screen reader on, then this notify call should do nothing, right? You shouldn't get any text because this is just sending a message to the screen reader.
Yeah. So I was only talking about specifically screen reader users. Did that make a difference?
It hasn't fixed this particular application. It's possible that it's because there's no, well, I have some thoughts, but I don't want to dwell on it too long because, like you said, there's other stuff to do.
Good point. Okay, I'll be.
So
Quorum Studio.
for right now, because this notify call doesn't seem to be working, which sorry about that.
Right paren selected.
I'm going to
Selected.
comment this out.
Deselected. Accessibility.
And the speech calls are not ideal for the reasons we talked about, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in for now.
Speech unselected.
So for right now, this collision code is going to use the speech to say whatever object we are running into. So as I mentioned before, this is most likely something that would be one of several different systems we put in to improve the accessibility of the game as a whole. But for right now, let's go ahead and use this as our starting point. And let's go ahead and put in some more of our game logic so that our game actually has something to do, so we can actually play the game, right?
What happens if you have multiple objects colliding with each other? Because you only have two things right now, item A, item B.
Yeah. So what'll end up happening is, suppose that I currently had two different collisions going on. The player was running into a tree, and at the same time, an NPC somewhere was running into a rock. I would receive two different events, one for the first collision, one for the second collision. But suppose that, you know, we had three things that were all simultaneously running into each other. A character is running into a tree, and there's an NPC running into that same tree and also into the player at the same time.
Yeah.
We would get one collision event for each pair of things colliding.
Oh, okay.
So we would receive a collision event for the player in the tree, a player in the NPC in the tree, and I think that is it. I didn't pay close up attention to which ones I just said.
Yeah, but I get the point.
Yeah.
So that's how item A, item B
yes.
should be adequate.
Yep.
Okay.
So at this point, I want to start adding some stuff to our game to make it actually playable, right? We had this idea, we talked about this yesterday, about let's add some, like a quest giver and something to do with the quest giver to our game. And so what I want to do now is I'm going to go to the scene.
Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs water. 00. Press enter to select items.
Yeah, it's funny, notify call is working for me right here, but not for...
Water 1. 32-0.
Bah. Whatever. Don't worry about that later. So the thing I want to care about right now is the quest giver has something for us to do. Presumably, we're going to do something where we talk to the quest giver, he tells us what the quest is, and then we're going to go collect some stuff. Or if you have something else in mind for your game, it could be something else. But for right now, I want to take we have about 10 minutes until I believe we have break between 9:45 and 10. Let's go ahead and take a few minutes, and before we start doing any of the programming logic for our game, let's go ahead and add the actual objects to our game. So everyone go ahead and take 10 minutes, open up your scene, and if you haven't already, go ahead and add some objects to your scene for actually doing the quest.
Will.
Okay, I've done that.
There's a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
so I finally got rejoined. I ended up back over in the learners breakout room somehow. So where are we at here? We're talking about quests.
Yeah,
DHC.
so
Item get name.
We went through how to use the accessibility manager in the game, and I'll send you this code on Slack.
Okay.
Slack Epic Advanced.
use the accessibility manager to send notify calls to talk to the screen reader. And unfortunately, it did not actually work in the game because of whatever bug we're running into at Quorum Studio right now. So it's commented it out. So the code that you had already with the speech statement is correct, but the commented out code is in the thing that I just posted in the Slack.
Okay. And what is the accessibility manager? What does that do? What is it?
So the accessibility manager, it is part of the internal workings of the game engine. So it's something we don't usually expose. It has a whole bunch of functions in it that call down directly to the screen reader to let it know, or not directly to the screen reader, but directly to the Windows native platform to tell it about changes to the structure of the program so that the screen reader is capable of reading it. It tells it when we add new controls, like, things like the text box and stuff. It also sends messages down to make sure that whatever the screen reader is trying to access is correct. So if the text changes in the text box, the accessibility manager makes sure that the native platform has the right information to give to the text or to the screen reader whenever it requests information.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you just kept in the speech object. Then.
You just kept in the speech object for right now.
Okay.
As far as the accessibility manager goes as well, the only call I would ever recommend calling from that is the notify call. Everything else is basically internal to the engine. And I would actually, I kind of expect that we shouldn't even have you get the accessibility manager. We should just give you a more direct way to do this from the game, but we don't have that currently. So, but that is how you can basically use Quorum to send messages directly to the screen reader when it's
doesn't say do that using the speech object.
So using the speech objects does text to speech, right? And so if you have the screen reader off, it will still report something to you, right? It'll still say it aloud. The notify call goes to the screen reader, which also means that because it's not using its own independent text to speech, it's using whatever your screen reader's voice and speed and whatever else you've got set up on your screen reader, as opposed to text speech, which is just using the default on your system.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So at this point, let's go ahead. Anyone who's not already done so, let's take a few minutes, just add some objects to your scene that are going to be the objectives related to the quest. And I want to make sure for each of these objects, make sure you give them names, which are going to be easy for us to get in the code because we're going to need those.
Stop share. Alt code tabs.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for right now while I'm adding stuff.
Stop meeting control.
Mostly just so you guys don't have to listen to the screen reader giving you information that's not related to whatever you're doing right now.
So what you're talking about is, let's say I want to get certain potions. It would be just those potions or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to collect some potions, put the potions wherever you would want them to be on your map.
Okay.
So if we've placed stuff around, do you want us also to create objects for them so they can be manipulated? Or
yeah, so that's going to be what we're going to be doing next. And if you'd like to get started on that, you can. Basically, the goal of what we're going to end up doing here is we're going to need to place the objects in the scene, which I want to just let everyone who hasn't already done so do it now because we have a few minutes before break. And the next thing we're going to be doing is making objects in the code and getting those objects so we can start interacting with them.
Okay.
Give it out to the PMs.
I will wait because I probably mess it up.
Take that.
I'm noticing that some tiles or objects, when you try to change the physics settings on them, and then you click away or you unselect it and then go back to it, the physics settings reset.
Yeah, so I know that Amanda Rothtyler was mentioning that too, that she had run into that, and that's definitely not correct behavior.
Right, because there are other tiles that are working perfectly fine.
Right. I'm not honestly sure why exactly that's happening. If there's something where you're trying to adjust the properties of something in the scene editor and it's not functioning correctly, aside from, obviously, I'll go see if we can fix that. But we can also, if there's something that's wrong, we can also modify it via the code. Anything that's in the scene properties can be changed via code as well.
Okay.
So,
well, yeah, that's what we were discussing yesterday, is that we're just basically doing the shorthand version of it.
Yeah, this is a tool to make it easier and more convenient so that you don't have to go do it all by hand using the code. But yeah, if there's something that's going on, that's a workaround basically, or something that you might do because you want to dynamically change stuff. But
so
yeah, we'll have to fix that.
when we were messing with the JSON files, I noticed that there's like an option for doing physics enabled on it.
Yeah.
By default, I guess just included in that.
Yep.
Is it possible that that is causing those specific tiles to
I would suspect it's related, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to go take a look at that. Probably once we're done with the sessions, we're on to office hours today.
Is it okay if the objects have names? Because I have 22 mushrooms.
Yes.
And I'm quite happy for them being called mushroom, mushroom space 1, mushroom space 2.
So, yeah, there's a couple of things here. If you want to get exact things, it's going to be easier to get things by their exact name using the game engine. But if you have just a whole bunch and you want to just sort of deal with them categorically, we'll have to do a little bit of extra stuff if we want to change them, or if we want to get like a reference to them and we don't have one yet. But if we're doing stuff like the collision stuff, then that's something we can do pretty easily. It's fine if you have a whole bunch and you don't want to go rename them.
Yeah, that's okay. I've got a whole bunch of mushrooms which are scattered all over, so it's okay.
Okay.
My collision code is not working, as in it's not saying anything. So I don't know if it's me or it's the screen reader.
All right, well, let's see. You want to go ahead and share your screen? And it's about break time, so anyone that is satisfied with their placement of stuff can feel free to set their stuff down for now.
One
We
thing
can take a
is, so
15-minute break here, but I'm happy to look at your issue for now.
really quick, so if you wanted to have I don't know, like a quest master you talk to first, so let's say none of the objects appear until after you talk to the quest master.
Yeah, that's part of what we're going to be doing in the next session.
Okay, cool.
So I've built it and it's working, I think. There are no...
Yeah, I see that you've got your save statements here. Player 1, player is B. Ouch. I don't see it running currently.
Not because I haven't run it.
Oh, well, yeah, that would explain why. Yeah, okay, go ahead and run it. Let's see what happens.
Run. Okay.
Yep. Your character is moving very slowly.
Because I've only told it 10 directions.
So right now, I think that looking at your scene, I don't know if you changed any of the default physics properties on these things. I see that you've just walked over a mushroom, but it doesn't appear to be physics enabled, so you just kind of pass through it. If you move straight up, and it'll take a little while because it's a little far away, but if you just press your up arrow, oh, you're still moving to the right.
No.
Like the character is moving right. I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong. I'm saying that
I know.
in the game.
I released the right arrow.
Oh, okay. So your release key stuff might not be set up then. So
something fishy with that, maybe.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and we can just take a look at the code while we're on break here.
Come on. Is it not going up at all?
No, it's still moving to the right.
Die. Begin collision. Okay, I got very ambitious with this.
Sure.
Look at this.
Yeah, left. Oh, yeah, you don't actually appear to have something for the right. I see if the key code is left, or if it's up, or if it's down, or if it's left again. Oh, also... Yeah, on this next line. It also looks like you have a space between your else and if here, and it looks like you just have an extra end, so it's fine. But
oh,
yeah, that's not actually the cause of your issue. But at the end of this line where you're checking for left, that needs to be right.
Well, it is break time. I don't know.
Yeah, it is break time. So I'm looking at Pranav's stuff while we're on break here.
Oh, you're on break right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I will be back in just a few.
Yep.
All right. So I saved this. Build. Build successful. Run.
Yeah, so I see you moving to the right.
Now moving up.
You still appear to be moving to the right.
I love this. Press key.
Press key, it takes a keyboard event.
Something really basic.
Oh, I see. Just 2 more lines down. For the key, for the up key and the down key, you're still setting X as opposed to Y on the vectors.
Oh. So I'm building a side scroller.
Yep.
Okay. This.
Looks like the build's successful.
Successful. Okay.
Okay. It looks like you're working correctly. I saw you move to the right and then a little bit up.
Yeah. So,
okay, cool. So
where do you think I should go now? Up or right?
Go a little bit to the left and then go down. I'm just looking for the nearest physical object that you can bump into in detection collision code. So. Yeah, almost there. Yeah, we could probably speed up your movement a little bit here.
Okay.
Player
1.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like your collision code is firing off now.
Yeah, okay. Collision is working. Okay. There is a scene class. Can I simply just go through all the mushrooms and enable physics on them, or do I have to do it by hand?
So the 2 options that we have available to us are, and I think we're going to have to do some of this stuff for how your stuff is set up, and it's probably useful for us to look at anyway. We can you can go into your scene, you can go to each of the mushrooms and you can set them in the scene. Or alternatively, we could encode, go to the layer that the scene, or go to the layer in the game, go through all of the items and just iterate over all of them. And if they are a mushroom, then change them programmatically.
Yeah, that'll be good. So if you'll cover that in the next session, good enough.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Good. How much time do we have left?
So we have another about 10 minutes of break.
Okay, I'll be back.
Yep. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to pass by me while we're on break here?
Oh, and I will need help with animation at some point on any of the days.
Yeah, we can do that.
And mark me down for the interview as well.
Okay, great.
I don't know. Every time I add I'm trying to add a girl to my scene for my quest master, and it keeps crashing.
It keeps crashing?
Yeah, it keeps crashing. I added it, I changed the name, and then I hit escape to get out of the selection of the square, and it crashes.
Oh, interesting.
It's the second time it's happened. I'm not sure. Maybe I can save it before it, because I kept losing the changes. I can save it before I hit escape out of the selection mode. That would be nice.
Double checking just to make sure for the accessibility manager code that we wrote.
Yeah.
The notify get focus object get name, all that's supposed to report something out when I'm using NVDA.
Yeah, when you're using the screen reader, that should report something, but it was not working when I tried it on my end. Actually, I might see if I can.
It wasn't working on my end either. Just now. I was trying to test it out to make sure.
I do
Out of
have,
curiosity, is
Yes.
Notify using, like in a lot of speech libraries I've seen, is it using like interrupt by default?
So what we do is we go into the native user interface automation libraries and we raise a notification event, which we don't send anything directly to the screen reader. We send something to the native Windows platform that the screen reader knows how to interpret. That's how the entirety of the accessibility system works.
Gotcha.
So because we're not doing anything, like we're not trying to like hack into the screen reader or anything, and we're just using the native platform messages, theoretically it should work just fine. But in practice, the screen readers do all sorts of nasty hacks to get around basically the fact that the native platforms are all buggy as hell in terms of accessibility. So sometimes things that should work do not.
Yeah,
So.
I know. Well, it's like one of the things is it's like, I don't know, sometimes it's useful to have I guess here's a question, because this is there a method in the accessibility manager for like silencing the screen reader?
There is not, no.
Okay. Yeah, because I'll tell you, when building a lot of audio games, one of the big things is whether you want to set interrupt to true or not. So basically, are you going to set silence before you call notify or not? So if you're in a menu, up and down arrowing, you don't want it to just continue talking, speaking that menu item, you don't want to just continue saying, play game or something, even though you've already pressed down arrow. You'd rather, you want it to interrupt and, clear the speech buffer and move on to the next thing, which isn't always the case, but,
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure if we can do that with the way that our system is set up or not, but I'd have to look into it.
Interesting. Okay, try this again. In that form, let's go scene US. Of course, scene's not working with NVDA. Palette. Let's go. No. Let's place the girl. Save. Are the names that we assign to these tiles just mainly just keys for accessing them?
Yeah, so those names are important for two reasons. One is we just use them primarily to access them. In applications where those objects are focusable by the screen reader, that's also the name that the screen reader receives. That's not relevant to what we're doing in this particular instance, but that's the other thing that it's useful for.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, I got it added without it crashing. Very good. Oh, I spoke too soon. It worked for a second. I'm gonna run this through the jar in command line and see if I can get a stack trace on why it keeps crashing.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
You should really change that so that on a crash, it like writes it to the app directory or something like that. You
Yeah,
know?
have logs.
Yeah, exactly. I should really do that, or phone home, or whatever it was. Just haven't had a chance to write a feature like that. It's not even that hard. It's just, you know.
When I was looking in Slack, looks like you said that you were referring to when you're running the command a JRE that you packaged with the Quorum Studio.
Yep.
Uh,
If you want to use that JRE,
I probably should, just that way I'm not running a different version of Java and not having different problems. Yeah.
Are you currently in the Quorum Studio folder in your program file?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's located at JRE bin Java.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. So at the top of the path here. JRE bin and Java.
And you'll need to do dash jar, but yeah.
Student NDA, talk to me.
Oh man, it is just positively infuriating to me that I cannot get this notify call to work in my game. I'm just kind of like trying to hack around, see if I can fix the issue. And
it's frustrating. I mean, like I spent like 6 hours on it yesterday. I mean, you can tell.
I'm not talking about like solving the issue for real. I'm trying to figure out why it's not working at all in my game, and if I can just like make the game get around the issue somehow, and I'm not able to. But
so that's the thing. So like when I was messing with it last night, the conclusion I came to is that there's some combination of calls that, if they happen in the right order, cause NVDA to get into a spurious state.
yeah,
When that happens, there's nothing, literally nothing that you can do to force it to go without restarting both Quorum Studio and NVDA.
well, the thing is that even if I restart NVDA, my game does not notify.
No. Listen, both Quorum Studio and NVDA. And interesting.
That's not what we found though with other people though, right? In the scenes, we usually just have to restart NVDA and not Quorum Studio, because if we restart Quorum Studio, it does whatever the steps are again, and then it becomes spurious again.
Well,
right?
hold on. Here's what's weird. This even was true yesterday when in my testing. If I loaded a new version of Quorum Studio, I had to close up the old one too. Why? I don't know. That just makes no sense. It's a new process. Why would anyone even care? Because I think it gets NVDA itself into a spurious state, and then it gets all screwy, and it's like, what the hell? So I could not, for the life of me, figure out why, but I did notice that when this occurs, it's interesting. So when we load the main game for Quorum, I mean all the interface components.
Yeah.
That before adding the content panel to the game itself. And interestingly, that means they're sending potentially calls down to the OS.
Yeah.
Would be in out of order. But if I do it after, I get the same effect. If I do it before, I get the same effect. If I don't load those components at all, then I don't get the effect. But of course, that's pointless.
I'm not doing literally anything with the GUI system at all in this game, and the notify calls are not working, which makes me wonder if it has something to do with just the underlying window as opposed to anything we're doing with the controls.
Well, and so interestingly, one of the calls that I sent you last night that I noticed NVDA was freaking out on was this call. I was looking at the NVDA source code, and there's a call here that was looking for like a point somewhere, and I forget which one it was. I'm trying to find it in the mess of junk. Where is it? Well, I'm not sure exactly, but at one point in time, one of the logs was looking like it was looking for like a find item by point call or something like that, and it was throwing an error at that time. So I could have sworn we had like a generalized call in that way. I wonder if there's a component that like flips out when the call goes in, but I could not identify which one or under what conditions or anything like that. And it could be spurious too. So
yeah, that's hard to say.
It's such a pain to debug this particular issue.
Yeah, for sure.
So finicky. I mean, dude, like if I learned anything from that NVDA source code, it was like they have hacks in there on top of hacks on top of hacks on top of hacks. It was such a pain. Like, dude, there was one spot in there that they literally had like code, and it would say like, if you're in this DLL in Windows, this implementation of accessibility doesn't work. So load this one. But if you're on this one and this one doesn't work, so load the other one back again. And it's like, oh my God, what a nightmare.
I've never looked at the NVDA source code. I've always wanted to, but I need to learn C++.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's in Python, and then they have some C++ little wrapper things, I think. I don't really know
Interesting.
well by any stretch, but you know, I only read it if I have no choice because it's funny.
It's an open source project.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
I'm not terribly surprised. I don't know. It's it seems like playing with screen readers is like, I don't know. They work well enough, but trying to build something for a screen reader, it just becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you've got like one company and like they control the whole pipeline and stuff like that is one thing, but we've been, you know, we wanted to make all of graphics accessible. So it's like we have to build our own API around it in order to make that happen, because, you know, OpenGL isn't just accessible magically.
Yeah.
And so that I mean, it is now through this, but like, that doesn't mean it's 100% bug free as we kind of get the kinks out, but ugh, what a process. So
yeah, if you want a single pipeline, Apple's the place to go, I guess.
yeah, I mean, and their stuff's okay, but like, how much of their metal infrastructure is accessible? We're not really sure, right?
Yeah, let alone the fact that it's like, I mean, you know, there's still, I would hazard a guess and say the majority of blind people are still using Windows.
Yeah, they are.
And
that's the other thing. That's why we supported Windows first.
Yeah, which is just crazy in retrospect. I mean, I don't know. I grew up using Windows. I'm still using Windows, but it's like, as cost effectiveness goes, I mean, I suppose NVIDIA is free, but I don't know. VoiceOver comes built into a Mac, you know, and narrator sucks. So
yeah, that is the problem, right? So it is.
I don't know. And then there's JAWS, which no one wants to pay for it.
Yeah, that is the truth. So anyway, sorry, I'm bantering. I don't mean to. I suppose that what time does we start again, William?
We're actually just a couple of minutes over the break point because it's a 50-minute break, and I think that it was 9:45 to 10 was the scheduled time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, something like that. So
yeah. So because we've taken this little detour on the talking about accessibility and getting some of the collision stuff in, which we're going to need for the later sessions anyway, we just kind of skipped ahead. At this point, we're going to go back and hit some of the stuff that's that we've glossed over. And so, whose screen am I looking at right here? Is this Pranav still?
You can always turn it off.
Yeah, I know. So for what we're going to do next, we are going to get the objects that you've placed in the scene that are used for your quest, and we're going to go hide each of them, and then we're only going to make them appear once we've interacted with your NPC. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go hide all the objects. Let me go ahead. I'll share my screen again.
Meeting controls window. Quorum.
So there's a few different ways that we could go and get each of these items. In my particular case,
Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs grass 57, 448.
In my game, there are 4 treasure chests which are scattered across the eastern side of my island that have to be picked up. In my case,
grass, treasure chest 4, grass 10, treasure chest 42 of 2, 480.0, 144.0. Code tabs tab control. Scene dot. Grass treasure chest 4. Grass treasure chest 42 of 2.
So in my case, there are 4 treasure chests, and each of them have a fairly simple name. They're just treasure chest 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because it's fairly easy to just go grab each of these, I could do what I already did with the player and do that find item by name call, or find item 2D by name that we already used to grab the player, right? And I could just, I know what these values are, I could just go plug it in for each of the 4. And for the 4 objects, that really wouldn't be too bad. The other option that's available to us is we could do something a little more hardcore, and we could start digging through the objects that are in our game and just iterating through all of them and find the ones that we're interested in. And I want to take some time and I want to investigate that for reasons. One is that if I just show you the find item 2D by name again, that's not particularly, you already know how to do that. If I show you something else, then that gives me a chance to talk some more about some of the other stuff in the engine. The other thing is that I know that for some of the games, there are a lot of things in some of your games. I know Pranav's, for example, has like more than 20 different objects to go pick up. So rather than individually going
your internet connection is unstable
every
alert.
single one of those, let's go ahead and see how we can use the programming logic available to us, use the code to iterate through these structures and make some decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my code.
Scene palette tree view. Projects tree view. Level 3. Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document add collision listener. Me.
So one of the things that I want to take a moment to, and actually even before I look at this code, I want to just draw attention to the scene palette again.
Code tabs, tab pane, tab
tree.
Expanded.
In particular, just the topmost level of it.
Treasure, water to grass bottom to level 1 default layer 2D expanded 1 of 1.
The scene is located on what is called the default layer 2D. And if you're not familiar with how the layers work because you've not been to a previous epic and I haven't talked your ear off about it, or just because you've forgotten because frankly, it's not something you usually need to know about to use stuff in the system. The way that the game engine in Quorum works is it has a series of layers of 2D and 3D components. On a single layer 2D, you can have a whole bunch of stuff drawn out, like the map that I have, right? But on a different layer, I could have a bunch of 3D objects, and I could put both of those in the game, such that you might have something like a 3D first-person shooter game with a 2D heads-up display that has like your hit points and how much ammo you have left, and then you layer that on top. So it goes and it renders everything on the first layer, it gets the second layer, it renders everything on that layer on top of the previous layer. And you can do a bunch of things with this. I'll show off how you can kind of do some like parallax motion with it using the layer system at the end of the week. But for our concern, we only have one layer. We're putting everything in this one layer. And what we really want to do is we want to just get all of the items on this layer and just kind of go through them all. So I'm going to go back to main.quorum.
Code tabs tab control. Main.quorum tab. Code edit text box document add collision listener. Me.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get that layer that has all of our items on it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go down to the end of our create game call.
And player can rotate.
And I'm going to get a layer 2D.
L-R-2-D space A-E-E-R.
I'll call it layer. I need to use the Alt-Enter hotkey to get myself the use statement for this, or go add it manually.
Space.
And now I am going to assign this
space.
value, get
G C
current
R T L
layer
Y R
2D.
D right paren.
Now, this is a special command available in the game engine that gets you whatever the layer 2D that you're currently working with is. In almost all cases, this will be the default layer 2D, unless you explicitly go change it. And the reason that matters is because whenever we do stuff like use the add or remove calls, to add things to the game or take them out of the game, they're actually going onto one of these layers. All of the items in the game are on a layer. The game engine just abstracts some of that away from you, so you don't have to know how the layer system works in order to do something basic like put a box on the screen. Once we have the current layer 2D, we want to get all the items out of it. And the way that we're going to get this is we're going to get an iterator object. I'm going to go ahead and put this code down, and then I'll explain it a little. So that is going to be iterator less than.
Less.
This is not using it for comparison, but this is using like the left angled bracket, you might otherwise call it. Iterator left angled bracket item 2D
TEM2
right angled bracket
greater
this is just
space
a variable. I'll give it whatever name I want. I'm going to call it iterator.
R
Alt enter to make sure that we have the use statement for it.
space
And this is going to be assigned a value. It's going to be equal to
equals space
layer
R colon
yes,
G T
iterator.
right paren.
And so, by the way, my screen reader is voicing through the connection, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure because I forgot about that previously. So
Iterator less item 2D greater iterator equals layer get iterator selected.
there are some things that are happening here. The first thing that I want to comment on is just what an iterator is. It's just a structure that has a bunch of items in it that we can iterate through. We can go through them one at a time. And in this particular case, it is an iterator that contains all of the items that are in our scene layer. All of the stuff that we have added to our game through the scene or otherwise is in this list. We're going through every single item in the game right now because everything is on this single layer. I do want to comment on what is this particular portion of the code.
Iterator less item 2D greater iterator I less I T E M 2D great space.
The less than item 2D greater than, what is that? Anyone have any guess?
You're setting the type of the iterator because how do you know what you want to go through unless you set it?
That's right. This is what is known as a generic object. So an iterator, you could iterate through all sorts of things. I could iterate through all the item 2Ds, but I could also iterate through all the item 3Ds. I could iterate through objects that are text or integers, like primitive values. I could be going through cars or cats or just anything you can imagine. There's all sorts of things that you might want to just go through one at a time. So the iterator class is set up so that you can give it a subtype, essentially, or basically tell it what type it's associated with. This is an iterator, but not just an iterator, it's an iterator of item 2Ds. That's why we had to give it that special code to indicate what exactly it is. Now that we have this, let's actually go through the objects in our scene.
Line feed.
So I'm going to use the first loop that we've used as part of the sessions here. In Quorum, we use, we have either repeat for so many times, or we have repeat until, or repeat while. I am going to do repeat while
space
iterator colon as next
right paren
at my end.
D repeat while iterate line repeat while iterator has next selected.
So repeat while iterator colon has next left paren right paren. Literally what this does is it indicates so long as I have stuff in the iterator I haven't looked at yet, I'm going to keep going in this loop. Literally go through the iterator over and over until I'm out of things to look at. I am going to assign a value inside this loop.
Blank.
It's going to be an item 2D.
IM2D space.
Item.
M space.
This is going to be equal to iterator colon
compare next. Code tabs tab control main.quorum tab item 2D item equals iterator next.
What this is doing is the iterator allows me to go through the list of things. The item that I'm getting is literally the next item in the list, and the iterator automatically keeps track of where I am in the list to make sure it gives me the next one the next time I ask for it. So why have I bothered to do all this? What is the value in being able to go through all of the items like this?
So when it finds your target item, you can have it do something in particular?
Exactly. So in this case, I am doing this inside of our repeat action. I'm doing this repeat to loop through things in our create game. So there's a few things I could do here. In the case of Pranav's game, I know that Pranav needed to enable the physics on each of these. So he could use this to set the physics to be true on these objects. But for all of us who are doing this, there's one other thing that we need to consider, which is, at least for my game, my intention is when you talk to the NPC, the items appear. The items are not visible until you've talked to the NPC who has given you the quest. So for that, I am going to make sure that each of my items that are related, I am going to hide them. In my particular example,
Scene.qs tab. Scene. Treasure chest 1 of 1, 448.0, 480.0.
I have 4 treasure chests inside my scene. I have purposely named each of them to have treasure chests as part of their name. They have a common element. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to main. I'm going to go to each of these items.
New notification from Slack. New.
And I am going to do an if statement. So if the
space
item
M C1
get name
G E right paren
colon
file 1 of 7
contains
S left paren.
And I'm going to use the text that is universal to my objectives, which is that treasure chest, right? It's going to be something different for whatever yours is, depending on how you put your stuff in.
T E E C T quote right paren E D blank.
And so the if statement reads,
if item get name contains treasure chest.
If item colon get name left paren right paren colon contains left paren treasure chest in quotations right paren. So I'm doing something very special here, which is that I am taking a variable item
colon.
I'm using the colon to indicate that I'm going to call something from it, and then I'm doing a function get name.
Get name.
Once I have gotten the name,
colon.
I'm using another colon right after the left and right paren. And the value that's returned from that get name, that text value, I'm using that text value to ask it a question. Basically, does that text contain
left quote treasure
chest? Does that make sense what I'm doing in this code?
No,
I assume this is case sensitive, right? So like
it is case sensitive, yes.
Have a lowercase potion, a lowercase p in potion.
Yes. So however you typed it in the scene editor, you want to type it the exact same way here. This is case sensitive.
So you have item colon get name colon contains, right? I mean,
item colon get name left paren right paren colon contains. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and this is an example of something called chaining, for anyone who's not familiar with the term. Basically, the concept of rather than assigning the things I'm getting back to variables and then calling things on those variables, just immediately calling it on whatever on the same line of code where I'm getting stuff. You don't have to do this if you think that this is a nuisance. I could very easily have just done text name equals item get name on the line up above, and then on the next line did name contains. But I feel like since it's the advanced group, I feel like I should expose you guys to stuff like this.
So if we have multiple objects, like I have a blue potion and a red potion, do we do else if and then get name contains red potion? We just
you could do that, or in this case, if all of the things that you care about are potions, you could just do contain potions, right? Or contain potion. But yeah, you totally could do if the item get name contains whatever, else if it is some other thing, check that. Yeah, you could totally do that.
Oh, okay. But if we just put potions.
Yeah, if it has just one common element that you know that all of the things you care about have that, and nothing else does, you can use that instead. Once I have figured out whether or not this item is relevant to what I'm doing, I'm going to say item
M
colon
C1 integer 1 of CH hide code tabs tab control main.quorum tab item hide
item colon hide. This is going to
new notification
take the
from
items
Slack
that are in my game, and it's going to make them invisible. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to run it just so I can show you guys.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ
game
game window.
Boolean for that, or is there a show?
No, there's a show as well.
Okay.
There's a show and a hide. And we are going to use those later.
And if I wanted to add physics, what's that method for physics? Is it just set
Quorums.
physics 2D or something like that?
I believe it is item : enable
physics.
and that
Boolean
takes
flag.
a Boolean,
1 of
true or
1.
false.
Code tabs tab left T right paren.
So in my case, the scene already has physics enabled on my items, but it doesn't hurt to set it again. So in my example now I have
If item enable physics true.
item : enable physics left paren true right paren.
And so with that same code, I could also disable the physics then
You
for
could, yes.
given sets of objects like I was having issues with.
Yep. And so,
Michael, really quick, sorry.
Yes.
Does it matter the order in which you do that? If the items are already hidden, can you still set physics on them?
it's totally safe to do it either way. The items that are hidden are actually still in the game. They just aren't visible.
Okay.
I actually don't know if you can run into invisible objects and physics will apply or not. That's something I have to go look into. But either way, I feel like it's fine to do it this way for what we're doing right here. Aside from this, the other thing that we're going to have to consider is that, okay, all of our items are hidden, right? At some point, I'm going to need to actually go show these again, though, right? I need to be able to go through and whenever I talk to the NPC, I need to make these items visible, right? So there's something extra I want to do here. What could we do when we talk to the NPC to go make all of these visible?
We could have the screen reader. We could just use say, I suppose, and it could just say something. I suppose we could also use voiceover, and it'll to just give some kind of dialogue, and then
sure.
You know, once some kind of trigger that occurs that once you talk to them, it'll show all of the items.
Yeah, so that's totally true, but I wasn't very clear with what I meant. When we want to show these things again, how would we do that in code?
Same thing we just did, but item.show.
Yeah, we could do the exact same thing again. We could just go through the layer, get all of the items, find the ones that are relevant, and just show them. The alternative that we could do is we could, while we are going through all of these things now, we could get an array and stick those things in an array so that we could come back to that array later and just go through the things we know are relevant, as opposed to going and looking at every single item in the game. This doesn't matter really for this particular size of game. We could totally just do it the way we just did, and we don't have enough items in the game that it matters. But it is the difference between looking through several hundred items and about like 4 or 5, right? So you can see why that sort of stuff might be useful in bigger scale stuff. For right now, we don't actually have any code to talk to the NPC yet. So that's going to be our next objective. Before we can show the stuff, we need to actually write the code that triggers what's going to make all the stuff show. So how do we want to do that? There's a couple of ways I can think of, but what do you guys think? In terms of how we trigger the conversation and then make things appear.
I'm guessing it has to do with a collision.
That's one way we could do it, yeah. We could just make it so that when we collide with the NPC, we could just have it happen.
I don't know if there's a way to tie a trigger to a item specifically when that item is interacted with.
So when you say interacted with, what do you mean?
I suppose collided with, I guess.
Yeah, so in the case of collision, we could totally do the same sort of thing that we've done already in our collision code, right? We could do something where...
I think there is a way to intercept when a collision is about to happen. Or if there isn't, then we could always use distance, because I've seen some variable some function which talk about distance in the library. So as you approach it, ideally I should have a keystroke, you know, in press key, which will say, okay, I press Q.
So that's the other option that is obvious to me, is that we can either just collide into the guy or make it so
new notification from Slack.
We press a button to talk to him, right? Like your interact key that you would have in a lot of games. So in terms of what we should do, I'm going to leave this one to you guys. What would you rather do? Would you rather run into him, or would you rather get close and press a key?
From an audio game perspective, I think running into him is just kind of going to be, well,
if you have the collision event, it could still announce that you've run into him. and then you press a key to activate the actual.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's it. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Yeah, where it's like it basically you can press spacebar, but spacebar is only going to interact with another player if you're within a specific distance of something.
Okay, so with that in mind, I think that this makes sense. Let's go ahead and write some code then to make it so we can interact using a key on the keyboard with the NPC. In order to do that, what's the first thing that I need to do? Or there's multiple things I need to do, but what are some of the things that we're going to need to do?
You need to get the NPC in the first place.
Yeah, we'll need to know where the NPC is. That's a good call. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add a field to the top of my file, just like I am already getting the player. I'm going to make another one for item 2D.
M2D space.
I could call this anything. Sorry, what was that?
What do you mean by NPC?
Sorry, NPC is an acronym that stands for non-player character. It is someone in your game that is considered to be like it's a humanoid. They might have some relevance to whatever you're doing. It's just something that is not a static part of the terrain, but it's just a character you can interact with in some way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I should make that more clear. So for our particular game, we can call the variable whatever we want. I'm going to call my quest giver.
ESTGIVER equals UIDE.
Similar to the player variable up above it, I'm going to make this one start out undefined because we're going to get the value from the scene. So in order to get this from the scene, what do I have to do?
Find
Blank.
item. What is it? Like find item.
Find
2D.
item 2D by name.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So quest giver equal to
space
find item 2D by name. And I actually do not remember what I named my quest giver, so I'm going to go check that.
Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs water. Gray ogre 1 of 1. 106.
So I am going to change that.
Name edit gray ogre. Gray ogre selected. QEFGVR.
So in my game, I have just changed the name of my character to something easier to remember and to put in.
Code tabs tab control.
And since the same name is also what we're currently reporting using the speech in our collision event, this was also going to change what the user hears when they run into him. So
quote QEFGV quote right paren.
This is what my code looks like right now to get the quest giver.
Quest giver equals find item 2D by name. Quest giver selected.
Just about out of water here. I'll have to fix that in a few. Now that I've got the quest giver.
Really quick,
yes.
Just to let you know of a little bug I've been dealing with, and I think I finally figured out what's going on. When I'm selecting something, using like Control Shift right arrow in the middle of a line, and then press like, and then try and type over it, it seems to, I don't even know what it's doing. It's doing something very bizarre.
Does it seem like
it's like screwing up my line of code, and it takes me a while to like straighten out what's going on.
Yeah, I think that actually, I think Pranav mentioned that he ran into this as well. There seems to be something where if you select a portion of the line using that code, and then not if you backspace, but if you like immediately start typing something there, it seems to desynchronize what the text box in Quorum has and what the underlying structure thinks it has, which is a really serious bug, and I need to fix it, but I can't. That's not like a 5-minute fix, unfortunately, so I haven't been able to get it done right here. But I appreciate
you know about that. Yeah.
If you run into that, closing the text box and reopening it will fix that for just getting you past the issue.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So
yeah, and it was like every time I do undo after that happens, which is usually when I go to, it does not undo it.
Yeah, the undo gets screwed up as part of that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the quest giver in our code. What do we need to do next?
Up in the main part of your program, you just assigned quest giver to be undefined as well, right?
Yes. Item 2D quest giver equals undefined. And then the create game, I gave it a value.
Would we create the condition inside of the collision that's nested if the item B or item A is a quest giver, do this, do that, and stuff.
Yep, so we could do that. So if we want to do this using the collision system, we could go into our begin collision stuff and set some stuff here.
Quest giver equals find item 2D.
For what we're doing right now, where we're going to get close to him and press the spacebar or some other key, whatever key we want, to talk to him, we don't need to do anything in the collision for that, because we mostly just need to know that we're close enough and when we press the key. But if you wanted to do it via the collision system, you're totally right. This is where you would go do it, right? In terms of reporting information to the user, because of how we've set up our speech call here.
Speech say, item get name.
Quest giver has a name, and so if they run into the quest giver, assuming he's physics enabled, the player will hear whatever his name is in the program when they run into him. So we don't need to do anything else in terms of that part, at least. But let's go ahead and let's add some extra code to our pressed key stuff, our pressed key action, in order to do something when the user interacts with the NPC. So I'm going to go to my press key action. What key should we use for interacting with the quest giver?
I like X or spacebar.
X or spacebar. Other votes?
Maybe spacebar.
Okay. I'm hearing generally spacebar seems good. So let's go ahead and do that. So if the event colon key code
what D
equals event colon
T
space
space integer code tab D blank.
Now here's probably the trickiest part here. If we press the spacebar, what exactly do we do? At a high level, not even thinking about the code, but what do we need to do first? Suppose I'm on the opposite side of the island. I'm really far away from this guy. Should pressing spacebar do anything?
Well, the first thing we need to do is just check if you're within, I guess, 1 square away from the NPC.
Sure. So let's start by figuring out how close are we to the NPC. In order
I need to
do
orient
that,
myself in some way because I don't know where I am.
Yeah. So you would normally, in a lot of games, you would typically expect that your character has a certain directional facing, especially in an RPG like this. And whichever direction you're facing would usually indicate which thing you interact with. Because you could be like up against a corner where right up above you, there's someone you could talk to. And to your right, there could be another thing to interact with. That could be another player to or another character to talk to or something like that. I don't think we should worry about that for right now. That's totally legitimate, but just to make sure we keep moving because we've fallen a little behind. I really wanted to make those notify calls work. I'm sorry. But let's start by just saying, step 1, are we close enough, right? So let's start by figuring out what is the distance between us and the quest giver. In order to do that, there are some things that are possible for us. We could manually calculate it, right? There's a number of different ways we could do that. We could do it in a really, really easy way, like a really kind of primitive way. We could just kind of check to see how far our X is from the quest giver's X, and if it's below a certain threshold, like also check the Y, and if the Y is a certain amount. That's not the most accurate thing ever, but it would work, right? Alternatively, we could go grab the actual distance formula for Cartesian space, which is what we're in because we're in 2D. And off the top of my head, you know, it's
the square root of x1 plus x2 squared in parentheses plus y1 plus y2 squared in parentheses.
Yeah, I think it's minus, not plus, but yes.
Oh, is it minus? Whoops.
Yeah, but you remembered it better than I did. So yeah, we can do it that way. The alternative is that we have stuff in our standard libraries to help with stuff like this, right? We already have the vectors and the compute package. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open my web browser.
EPIQ teacher post at teacher track
go to the Quorum
lessons. Live reference.
I'm going to go to the reference and I'm going to check out the
toolbar.
Vector
Find in page
class.
VECT.
Oh, I'm not in the right place.
Quorum find to the standard library. Toolbar. VECR. 2.
That'll not work
Vector
because
2.
your screen reader
Angle and
working.
Sorry, what was that?
The find in page may not work for you because you have a screen reader loaded.
Mostly I was in the wrong place.
Okay.
I was clicking the wrong thing. But one of the things that I want to take a moment and draw attention to is how I mentioned before how the vector 2 is really useful for the physics system because it can do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Well, we can leverage that ourselves. I want to draw attention to
distance, main landmark table with 6. The other
this particular
distance.
function.
This action computes the.
I'm not experienced enough with the screen reader to know how I would get this to voice properly on this web page, but I am looking at the distance function in vector 2. What this does is the vector 2 has its own position in space, right?
You increase the size of your web page.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you for calling me out on that. I very quickly forget. So the vector 2 has some position in space, right? Or it has some direction. The vector 2 is flexible in that way. When we were using it for the linear velocity, to us it represented direction and magnitude, right? We were using the vector 2 to imply the character should be moving at a certain speed in a certain direction along the x and y axes. But vector 2s could also be used to represent a point in space, right? It's just an x value and a y value, so why couldn't I just give it the position of the player character or the position of the NPC? Once I've done that, I can use the distance action to return how far away that vector 2 is from another point in space, which is what we're going to do here. So I'm going to go back to my code.
Number distance. Core.
Before I even write any code, does that explanation make sense? Is there anyone that would like me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, say it again, please.
So in the code that we're going to use, we've already looked at how the vector 2 can be used to represent distances and like an amount of force in a direction, basically.
Yeah.
When we use it for the linear velocity, right? When we're using it for the linear velocity, we were saying this vector represents
that's right.
a direction.
Yeah.
But the vector 2 can also be used to represent a point in space. The point in space that we care about 2 points in space for this particular example, which is the position of the NPC and the position of the player character, right?
Oh, okay.
So if we take the vector 2, let's start by making the vector 2 that we have in this function. We can make a brand new one, or we can use the one that we already have because it's the pressed key, and we already have this vector 2. Just to keep it clean, I'm going to make a brand new one. I'm going to make vector 2.
VECTOR 2 space.
And this vector 2, I'm going to call quest giver position. That's pretty wordy. I like having wordier variables that help me remember what things are, but you can make it shorter or anything you want. I'm going to make this quest giver position. And in this quest giver position, I am going to call quest giver position colon set position. Or sorry, set. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Left paren.
Quest giver position colon set left paren, and I'm going to give it the value of quest giver
get x right paren comma space
quest giver get y
right paren.
Okay.
So all I've done here is I will go ahead and select the stuff so the screen reader it.
Vector 2 quest giver position set quest giver get x quest giver get y selected.
So I just made a brand new vector 2. I called quest giver position inside my if statement in the pressed key. When you press the space bar, this is what happens. Make a vector 2. This vector 2 gets set to the position of the quest giver.
Yeah.
Okay,
could you
so-
show that routine again?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to post it somewhere, or do you want me to just hit it? With
No,
the
no.
screen reader?
Just
Yeah, if you can
voice
read
it out.
again.
Vector 2 quest giver position set quest giver get x quest giver get y selected.
This is on 2 separate lines. Vector 2 quest giver position. Second
Oh,
line
I see.
quest giver position colon set.
Got it.
Can
Okay.
you enable punctuation for a minute there?
I should absolutely do that. I do not know how. but I would do it.
NVDAK, NVDAK P. Insert P, I think. that's
Symbol
it.
level most
Yeah,
And then do
once more?
all.
Symbol level all.
There.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now
Vector
read
2,
the first
Vector
line.
2 quest giver position colon set left paren, quest giver colon get X left paren, right paren, comma, quest giver colon get Y left paren, right paren, selected.
Yeah, that helped a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for telling me about that, because like I said, I have some experience with the screen reader, but definitely not the most proficient. So I appreciate
What was
it.
that
So that-
command again?
That was one line or 2 lines?
So that is 2 lines. So the first
Okay,
line.
read the first
is
line.
Vector 2 quest giver position selected.
Just a vector 2 and a variable name. You can give it whatever name you want.
Okay. So okay.
What was
And
that?
now-
command
Sorry, what
you-
was that? Sarah?
What was the NVDA command you used?
Insert P or whatever your NVDAK is.
Yeah.
P.
Okay.
Quest giver position colon set left paren, quest giver colon get X left paren, right paren, comma, quest giver colon get Y left paren, right paren, selected.
And so that's
Wait.
the second line.
Position is of type quest giver.
So the quest giver position is the name of the vector 2 that I made. The quest giver is a variable of just that represents the quest giver NPC that we have.
Okay. So no, that's okay. So my quest giver is called OG1.
Sure.
Okay. So OG1 is now, how do I get its position? Get X and get Y?
Yeah, X and get Y. That's what you're going to set into the vector.
That's what I'll set into. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is I am setting both my player and the non-playing character into 2 separate vectors and then running a distance action between the 2 vectors.
We could either put them into 2 different vectors, or we could just use the one vector and plug the values of the player into the other one, or into the call. I'm about to write that part next. So let me go ahead and do that actually. So like Pranav said, we could make a brand new vector, put the player into that one as well, or we can do what I'm going to do here. Number, which as we recall is what? What's the difference between number and integer?
Float.
It's a float. Yep. It's just it's a number with a decimal value. So number distance
space
is equal to
space T G V P.
Number distance is equal to the quest giver position colon
event
distance
2D1 of 4.
Is it distance 2D?
Firefox. Tyler Linder has left the meeting alert. Task switcher.
I don't know if that's. I think code completion might be lying to me there. I'm gonna just
code 0 dot dot 0
Yeah,
right paren.
Right
paren 0.
Number distance is equal to the quest giver position colon distance, and I'm going to give it the player
B R
get X and the player get Y.
What right paren.
So here is the new line of
feed.
code I've added.
Number distance equals quest giver position colon distance left paren, player colon get X left paren, right paren, comma, player colon get Y left paren, right paren, selected.
Okay.
So I explained a little bit in like English how this worked before, but now that we have the code, does the code make sense as to what we're doing here?
So we're creating a vector. We are setting the vector X and Y for the NPC.
Yep.
And then what is, I guess, exactly distance doing? I'm not sure if I'm quite getting that.
What distance is doing is, you know how we were just talking about the distance formula? The actual math it would take to check the distance between 2 points in Cartesian space?
Yeah.
So that's literally what we're doing here is we are getting this vector and we are asking it, hey, you are a point in space. Please tell me what the distance between your point in space is between this other point in space that I'm giving you. And it gives us that number that is literally it's just a distance in space.
Right, I see.
So
So it's
that
getting it
value
based
we
on
return
the.
is sort of,
Yeah, I get it.
So this would just basically not necessarily report because we're not having it report yet, but just calculate the distance.
it calculates the distance and stores it in the distance variable. Yep.
Hey, William,
Yes.
if you would put, I kind of fell behind in the layer part of it.
Sure.
That block of code. Would you put that on the, chat or something like that?
Sure. Which part of the code do you need?
The layer 2.
Oh, the layer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part. Yeah, that's part. Yeah, just
Number distance equals quest giver position. Layer 2.
I'll go ahead and put this in the
Save
Slack.
event colon get Slack bar epic.
Thank you.
Epic Advanced.
Quorum Studio.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So at this point, we need to do something with this distance. So basically, what distance is close enough, do we think? What feels like a good distance to talk to the character at?
Somewhere within 32 pixels.
So 32 pixels is possible. So we will have to be very close to the other character if we do that. We just want to consider that our character does take up some space on the screen, which each of the tiles is 32 pixels by 32 pixels. So we don't want to be so close up on it that we have to be like right up against him probably. We might want to give just a little bit of buffer, but about 32 is right, yeah. So I'm going to say maybe like 40-ish, 50-ish should be plenty. So what I'm going to do is, what should my if statement look like here? Suppose that I want to do the 40 number. And you might want
to.
Yes.
Would be, I guess I guess I look at it from an audio game perspective, where it's like basically you want to be sitting a square that is adjacent, not diagonally to that object you want to interact with.
Right.
I guess why would we need to set that set the pixel offset, because each square is 32 pixels.
Yeah. So the reason that I mentioned that is just because our character, when we're moving them, isn't perfectly constrained to the grid like our scene was, right? When we were making the scene in the scene editor, we had each of these grid spaces and we were placing each tile within the grid. But when we're moving the player around, you could press the left arrow for just like, quarter of a second or something.
Right.
That's basically what I'm saying, that you want just a little bit of buffer, so you don't need to be exactly perfectly lined up with how our
I did at least like 32 square root of 2. That gives you your diagonal distance. Oh. Right.
Yeah, that's true. So you could use that as your base if you wanted to try and get the diagonal in as well. Yeah, that's totally true. I'm being just a little bit sloppy with the calculations because I'm kind of just like, it's good enough, which is honestly how a lot of game design is, which is not necessarily what you want, but it's honestly like, a lot of times in games it's okay to kind of eyeball things, or to kind of just give it your best guess. And then if you're wrong, then you end up having to go change it. But so supposing that I want to use my admittedly arbitrary, it's not like the magic perfect number. If I wanted to say that I only want to trigger this if the person, the player is within 40 units of the NPC, what should my if statement here look like?
If distance is
space
less than equal to
space
40
less equal space
exactly
0 D.
And now
Greater
this
equal
is
to.
Sorry, what was it?
You pressed less equal to, I think. No?
S space less equals space
less equal to
less.
Yeah, if distance is less than or equal to 40 is what I have here.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yep,
I was thinking reverse.
No, it's all good, man.
Yeah, okay.
So if this happens, this is when we need to start doing some stuff. And this is where it's going to come down to basically, we talked earlier about what does it look like when the quest happens, and we talked about like the sort of script for what's going on. We're going to need some actual dialogue, whatever specifically you want your character to say. It's going to go here as part of most likely a say statement or an output statement for right now. You could do something more complicated in the future, like play recorded voiceover if we wanted to. But for right now, let's just do something simple, output or say statement. We'll also need to go and find the things that were hidden and make them not hidden anymore, which we could either do by doing the sort of array approach that I talked about, or what I think we'll probably do is using that same kind of code to iterate through, find the things, and show them. So the say statement, I'm going to just put something in here that says
blank.
Say
Quote
stuff.
FTF quote.
This is not a very useful quest description from the quest giver, but this is something that you need to figure out what you want your quest giver to say. So I'm going to let you guys have a few minutes to do that. Before we type in that particular code for the say statement, though, let's go ahead and make all of our things appear once we get up and talk to the quest giver. Right. So I'm going to go ahead, go to the next line. And so I've put this in the chat in Slack in the advanced channel. So if you don't have it handy, you can take a look at it there. But let's all go ahead and work on this together. What does the code look like to get the items from the scene and show the ones that we want for our objectives?
So repeat, no, we need to get the iterator first.
Yeah, we will need to do the repeat, but we need the stuff beforehand. We need our layer.
Yeah, in fact, I fell behind there because I was parallelly debugging.
It's all good. Do you want me to send you that code on Zoom as well so you have that for the Create game?
Yeah, if I can figure out how to pull it out of a Zoom chat.
Where would you prefer to have it?
Now, just tell me, and I'll write it as you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's write this code together for the press key where we're at right now. Let's all write this together from scratch. And then the code will be almost identical up there, but we can take a look at it together if you'd like to just sort of nail it down. Yeah. So it's going to be, we're going to get the layer 2D. So layer 2D,
L-E-R-2
layer
space R.
That's capital,
equal
right?
space.
Yes, capital L and layer 2D, and capital D as well.
2D. Yeah, layer
so
2D.
Layer 2D layer is equal to get current layer 2D.
R 2D right paren. Layer 2D layer equals get current layer 2D left paren, right paren, selected.
Get current layer.
Get current layer 2D.
2D, okay.
Left paren, right paren. From there, what comes next? Anyone remember?
Yep, you need that iterator.
Yep, so we're going to go ahead. Iterator, less than, item 2D,
M2,
greater than.
D, greater. Space, I.
I'll call it iterator, you can call it whatever you want. This is going to be equal to
space.
Layer, colon, get
X, right paren. Iterator less item 2D greater iterator equals layer colon get iterator left paren, right paren, selected.
Yeah. By the way, is the speed of the screen reader good for you guys, or would you rather have it up or down?
The speed is okay. It's simply that. Wait. How do you spell iterator again?
Capital I-T-E-R-A-T-O-R.
Yeah, T-R-A-T-O-R, right?
T-E-R-A-T-O-R.
No wonder.
Line feed, iterator less item.
All right, so at this point, we are ready to put in our repeat statement. So what does this need to look like? What is the condition that we repeat on? I told you guys coming in to the beginning of the sessions, there was going to be audience participation.
Oh, sorry.
So.
Sorry, I was.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Iterator, or sorry, repeat while iterator has next.
T. Hash E X right.
This is the new statement.
Repeat while iterator colon has next left paren, right paren, selected.
Okay. And from here, we're going to. Yes.
Is there any shortcuts you're using for managing indentation? Or are you just?
I am manually tabbing it out, unfortunately. Okay. I would really like if we had some shortcuts for it though, because it's a pain in the butt, to be honest.
Yeah. All right. And then we need to create an item object and set it to iterator next.
Exactly.
Blank.
Let's do that. So item 2D. Item
F2D space
is equal to iterator colon next.
Compare next code tabs tab item 2D item equals iterator colon next left paren, right paren, selected.
This indentation's getting pretty crazy. I'm thinking of moving this out to an action.
Item 2D iterator over that.
Item 2D item equals iterator colon next left paren, right paren,
Next.
selected.
This is the first statement inside of our repeat loop.
Yeah.
I was trying to avoid anything beyond like 4 or 5 indentation levels because it just starts getting too crazy for me. I'm just like, I don't know.
At least you're not doing Python, otherwise it would be even crazier. The code won't even run.
Yeah, that's why I use Python a lot, and that's literally the reason why I have that little quirk is
It was
run
something
Python.
that kind of surprised me looking at NVDA. I would have assumed that Python would have been very hostile to a bunch of people writing screen readers, you know?
Yeah, I know. There's some people that say that, but I don't know. I love Python, and
Really?
as long as you have an editor that's actually like good at it handling indentation.
That's fair.
And, yeah, and you know you have indentation indicate on it. You know, it reads it just fine.
Yeah. I'm personally not a big fan of Python, but it's not really because of the indentation. It's just because it's weird and different, and I don't like it. I haven't touched it very much.
That's fair.
It doesn't look like the other languages I use.
I get it.
So we have our item. It equals to iterator.
Line feed. Item 2D.
Next. Now that we have this, we can start testing to see if the item is what we're looking for. So what do we do here?
Contains, right? We need to change something.
Yeah, we're going to be using that contains, but what do we do? What are we using the contains on?
So we're going to say
if statement.
It's going to be part of the if statement, yeah. So we're going to do if.
Item get name colon
name.
contains.
Yeah, that's right.
C1
Item get name.
Get name left paren. C1 integer 1 of 330.
Contains.
N S. Left
And then
paren.
whatever
Quote.
the string that you're using to identify your objectives is. So for me, that's treasure chest.
T E E C T quote. Right paren.
So this is what my
If
line
item
of code
colon
looks
get
like.
if item colon get name left paren, right paren, colon contains left paren, quote treasure chest quote right paren, selected.
Your line of code will look a little different because your text will be different inside that contains, depending on whatever your objectives are.
So I'm using treasure chest as well, but
Oh, well,
how
no,
do
it has
you
to be
put-
different. Go get your own.
Oh, fine. I was gonna ask you, how do you put stuff inside the treasure chest?
Oh, put stuff inside the treasure chest? So it's just an
Uh-huh.
image, the same as the other things are. But if we wanted to, we could try and do some stuff where we try and make a drawable that looks small enough that you could kind of tuck it inside or something along those lines. But the treasure chest doesn't have anything special to make it appear to have stuff or anything.
I see. So it would just be something like if you clicked on the treasure chest, you could open it and then, just, I don't know. I guess you'd have to somehow associate items with that treasure, with a specific treasure chest if you had different types of items.
So something I've seen that's incredibly common is that you have something that is just a treasure chest that is just an object in the world. It appears to be closed. You go up next to it, you interact with it. An animation plays that shows it opening. You can't see that there's anything in it, but some text will pop up or something that tells you that based on the code that's they associated that object with an item that's supposed to be inside of it. And then the code puts up some text or something that says you acquired something, whatever it is, right?
Gotcha. How would you create that association?
So it would actually be fairly similar to what we're doing right now, right? The sort of stuff that we're doing right now where we're doing this event key code equals space, and then we're checking to see, are we close enough to the NPC? You could reasonably be doing something similar to this, where you're checking to see, am I right next to a treasure chest? If I am, which treasure chest is it? And then have some code written somewhere to just store in a variable. You could do it in a number of different ways, but that's basically what it is. Just
I see. So you could create a hash map or something that's
you could do
associated
something along those lines. That would be a good way to do it.
How about that? So when in this if condition, that we're gonna do the enable physics false on that item, and then item show on the next line.
Yeah.
And then in that way, once we set up, that's gonna show up, but that item is gonna be physics not enabled, and therefore, if we're gonna get to the collision part, we can set up the collision with that item itself, and then
New notification from Slack, new message.
Your player go over it, that's considered as a picked up.
Yeah, you could do something along those lines. And if you ever want to, all of the stuff we've been doing in the collisions has required that physics is turned on, but that's not strictly necessary. We could, in the code, we can set the set collidable flag to be true. By default, that's true if physics is on and false if physics is off. But we could just set that to be true.
Okay.
Yeah, we could just set that to be true, and then if you walk into the now physics disabled item, it'll still trigger collision.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So that's probably the easiest way to do this sort of like pick up an item kind of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that you know what you are picking up.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. So yeah, we don't need to do so then I can just show. All right.
Yeah. So for right here, we need to
Blank.
Item
M
show.
S A show left paren. Code tabs tab
In my
control.
case, this is all
Main
I
dot
need.
quorum
I just
tab.
need to,
Code edit text box dot.
Talking to the screen here. In my case, this is all I need. I just need to show the things that I've hidden previously. But you could reasonably do other things here as well if you wanted to, right? Before I save, run this, just show what it does. Is everyone on board with me here?
I'm getting an error, but we can look at it later.
Okay, let me go ahead and run this, and then we can take a look whatever your error is. So I'm gonna go ahead, save, run.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ game
so
window.
If I move up into the NPC, it should still voice telling me that I've run into him.
Quest giver.
If I then press my spacebar,
Stuff.
it says
Space.
stuff, which was my say statement. It's very helpful. He gives me very good quest instructions. And then a bunch of chests just appeared on my screen.
Did you create a new speech object to do that?
In this case, I did not make a new speech object, although you should either make a new speech object there or make a speech object at the top as a field that you can just reuse.
How did you call that without creating a new speech object?
I just used, there is a keyword in Quorum that is say. It's literally S-A-Y. It's blocking, which is why I encourage you not to use it overly for your games. But, you could use it if you wanted to.
Okay, so, interesting. So it's blocking.
Yeah, and that's intentional because we use it a lot for when people are brand new to the language and they're testing stuff and they might want to use output statements, output like hello world or something, but they might want to do something where it speaks it to them rather than having to go through like a console or something and using the screen reader. So the say command are convenient for that.
Okay.
It did hide it and it mentioned when I collided with it, but it's not showing it.
Okay, so
Collide with it.
At this point, this is a good point for us to just kind of like all get caught up and settled. So let's go ahead and for anyone that is currently like has their stuff up and working, we can take a few minute break. But let's go ahead and let's just go through everyone and make sure we're all on the same page, get everything working. So I know that Sarah, I know you have problems. Steve also said that he's having errors that we need to go address. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and go through these.
And after both of them, I will come to you with compile time stuff.
Sure.
I think it's the iterator line. Nothing major.
Sure. So Steve, would you like to go ahead and share your screen? We'll take a look.
Sure. Meeting control.
And we can all debug together as
right.
friends and non-judgmental family.
There we go. Yeah, I'm getting this error right here.
Okay, so I see what's going on here, but since we're doing this together, if you're okay with it, Steve, I can also just tell you if you'd like me to just tell you.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so on the end of the line, that get y, you need to be calling that from the player. Right now, the get y doesn't associate with anything.
Oh, okay. I see. So I need to also.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I figured it was something simple.
Yep. There you go.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so we can go ahead and Sarah, if you want to share your screen and take a look at that.
Cool.
All right, so I can see iterator, get the iterator, it contains potion, you show it. You want to run your game and just show me what it does?
Sorry.
I'm going to stop sharing and reshare with the sound. Forgot.
Sure.
So the potion is right by the trees at the bottom.
Okay.
Blue potion.
Oh, okay. So the way that you're trying to do it, you're kind of like trying to find hidden items and you want it to show when you find it. Is that right?
Tree base.
Otherwise, what's the reason for hiding?
So the way that we were working on this, although I will say before I even say this, that this is totally like 100% a reasonable thing you could be doing for a game and it's just fine. The code that we have set up is one of the characters in the game, you talk to them and they basically go tell you to find something and then the things they want you to find appear on the screen. That's the intent of what we've been building up so far.
Okay, so in mine, I was thinking, so I hid the potions earlier.
Yep.
And what am I trying to show? I'm trying to show still the potions,
Yeah,
right?
you want to show the potions. So how did you, was that just you collided with potions or did you press space on it?
Yeah, I just collided with it. Oh, I didn't hit the space.
Yeah.
Oops.
Oh. That's okay. We can go ahead and take a look at this. Let's see, quest giver position. Oh, okay. So we actually need to do something just a little bit different for yours because, which is totally fine. With your code, you're not talking to a single character. What you really want to know is if you're close to one of the potions, right? Because there's a bunch, I'm guessing, that are scattered across the level.
There's 3 that are scattered.
Cool. So what we need to do here is rather than using that quest giver variable, which in the code that we wrote together, in my code that I am using for my particular game, that quest giver was just like a particular person that I went and talked to and I'd set them that value before. But what you actually want to do is
I could change it to like the ogre or something.
Oh, that's totally fine. I think that your game is interesting, and I think that we should keep it that way. And this is kind of a good opportunity for us to talk about what we should change to make it work, right? Okay. So rather than doing this check for the distance first and then iterating through all the items, what we actually need to do is we need to go through all of the items and check if any of the items qualify for what we're trying to do, right? So rather than this distance check, what we should do is we're going to move it down. So go ahead and we don't necessarily want to get rid of the code because we're going to use it later, but basically that that vector 2 quest giver position, the lines 94 to 97, you can go ahead and comment those out. So just go ahead and just like Control/ and that'll put them all in comment. And we'll need to get rid of one of the end statements at the, yeah, right there. That one will be good. Yep, that'll work. So you can go ahead and Command/ to comment that one out as well. And we can fix the indentation. But what we want to do is inside this repeat while the iterator has next, we're going to do that if item get name contains potion. So we find an item in the game that is a potion, and then we're going to check to see if you're really close to that particular potion. So let's go ahead and what's the easiest way to move it down there? We want basically those lines of code that we commented out. We want those inside the if statement.
I can just move them and
uncomment them, yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I do this and just delete out the other part that's not commented first. All right, where do you want me to move it to?
So this code is fine. It's the lines that I had you comment out. I guess I shouldn't have had you comment them out. I'm sorry.
Well, that's if I comment them out, I can delete what's not commented and then uncomment it.
Yeah. 94 to 97, we just want to move that down into the if statement on line 104. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say? If the item get name contains potion, then we want to make a vector 2, and then we want to set that vector 2, and then we want to calculate the distance.
All right, so just get this first.
Yeah, start by getting that.
Okay.
Go ahead and just copy paste that into your if statement on line 103.
Oh, wait.
Right above the item show.
Yep, I figured that out right after.
Okay, and then go ahead, you can select it again and just hit the command / again to uncomment it. And does it make sense what we're doing for everyone here that's watching? The goal here is not just to make this particular code work, but to kind of talk about how we could solve other problems in our game. Yeah, exactly. So if the distance is less than 40, we want to show it. And the only other thing we need to do is we just need to change how we're calculating that distance. So rather than that vector 2 quest giver position, rather than setting it to be the quest giver X and the quest giver Y, we want it to be the potion, right? We're going to get the position of the potion and check that against the player instead. So you can feel free to change the name of the vector 2 if you'd like.
Well, there we go. There was a little delay.
Yeah, sorry, I might be lagging just a little bit with the screen sharing here.
Actually, it's just potion position, not giver.
Yeah. And this name is just to help us to understand. This won't change what the code actually does, just changing the name of this vector 2. But
It'll help to understand it better.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I want
So rather than the potion position, which is what we're setting right now, we have an item that we already know is a potion, and that's what we just did with this if statement, right? We check to see, is the item that we're currently looking at, is it a potion? And so what we want is to set the potions X, or sorry, the items X and items Y, because we know the item is the potion. Yep, we'll do that for quest giver there as well. Oh yeah, you need to change the name of that as well. But does it make sense why that item is what you want to use for the set there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I think the only other thing that you need to do is if you scroll up just a little bit, that say statement where you found a potion, you just want to put that down with where you show the item as well, because you only want to tell them they found a potion if they actually did. Okay, cool. I think that should work. Let's go ahead and build it and run it, and we'll see.
And what I did is I happened to place the potions like by the trees, so they at least
Overlapping trees too.
they know around there somewhere.
Blue potion.
So again, press space.
You found a potion.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great.
And so I thought there were a couple of ways that they could kind of find those potions. So all of the potions are by the trees somewhere. And I do have this dirt path that is taking me around to the different trees.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's great.
All right.
Okay, at this point, I need to just go quickly grab a fresh drink. I'm going to just take a moment, get up, stretch my legs, and do that. So just take like a 2-minute break here. And then we're going to continue on with our game to start doing some of the programming logic for when we actually go and pick up the quest objectives.
Sounds good.
So I will be right back. Everyone may feel free to take a 2-minute break.
Are you okay if I use one of the bathrooms, or should I go downstairs? Or I'll go downstairs. It's fine. No problem at all.
I know I might be jumping ahead a little bit on this, but is there a way, is there a specific command kind of like enable physics where you could change it to, from false to true, to where you could have it within your code change the type of physics from unmovable to responsive in the code?
Sorry, I just got my headphones back on. The question was if you could change the type of responsiveness to be like unmovable or responsive or unresponsive in code.
Yeah, after you press a button or something.
Yeah, you could totally do that.
Okay.
So the way that you do that is you grab the object that you want to do it on, and it's item or whatever you call it, item colon set responsiveness, and then you need to give it an integer code to tell it which type it is. I believe there's also functions that allow you to just say like set unmovable or set responsive. I'm gonna double check to make sure that's actually true.
Okay, what was the position grabbing code? Because I fixed the rest of my issues.
Sorry, what was the what code?
Position grabbing. So I'm writing a separate function which says get quest something, and I need to do that when we move the grab the location of the player and the ogre, and I have to figure out how far they are.
Gotcha. So for the when you're pressing space to index them.
Yeah. So when I press space, I need to do the check. But what I'm doing is I'm not writing that that portion in the key down right now. I'm writing a separate function to keep it clean, and then I'll put that in the key down.
Sure. So if you want to just calculate the position, or sorry, calculate the distance.
Yeah.
That is, here, I'll copy paste this. Actually, copy pasting has been a little bit difficult for you because the Zoom and Slack chats are both a little difficult for you to get to, huh?
Yeah, so I'll see if I can work on Slack tomorrow and figure out what's going on, but I was using the web part of Slack, which is quite unfriendly. I will try the desktop app tomorrow.
Sure. Okay, so let me go ahead and...
I don't know if you saw, I posted a description on how to use Slack, although I posted it in Slack.
No, I didn't.
I know. That was what Andy suggested, and I was like, well, all right.
No, but are you
yeah.
using the desktop client or the web client?
Yes. So I'm using NVDA with the desktop client. And there's just a handful of keyboard shortcuts that you really need to know. The big thing about the desktop client that you should know is that almost just about all of your normal web keyboard shortcuts work. They probably set it up using Electron or something, Slack, and so it's using the web environment. And so you can press B to jump by buttons, E to jump by an edit box. You can even use insert F7 to pull up an elements list. There's just, there's some other keyboard shortcuts like Control-Shift-K for direct message, Control-Shift-L for a list of channels. But yeah,
no, so I didn't bother actually downloading that. So, but I will go do that.
Yeah, I use Slack every day for my work, so I can message you that description I sent. I can email it to you directly if you want.
No, that's fine. Let me go grab the desktop client because we use Teams here.
So while you're doing that, I wanted to take a moment and let everyone know what we're up to next. We talked about doing some of this code to get the behavior actually working when we run into the good items. The one other thing that's on the schedule for the day is learning about how to stream music, so we have music playing during our game. And so I'm going to leave it up to you guys which of those two you would rather do right now and which of those things you would rather do tomorrow, as we've got about 35 minutes left in our session for the day. Would you guys rather set up the game logic so that when you run into the items, they do something, or would you rather start getting music playing in your game?
It seems to me it's logic to continue on, messing with this item, and music is a little bit different. That's my opinion.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
I can always start with music tomorrow.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll do that. And then for right now, we'll go ahead and get the program logic setups for interacting with our items. For the issue that you're having, Pranav, where you need some of that code, I can go ahead and, can you access the Zoom chat reasonably?
I think so.
Okay, I will go ahead and I will post that there. All you want is the code that gets the distance, right?
Yeah, because I have the two characters set up. I simply have to get the distance, and then I can set up the logic to do whatever I want to do.
Cool. I'll go ahead and I will post this into the Zoom chat, and I'll send it straight to you. I'll just post it everywhere. I'll post it here. So at this point, I've gone ahead and put that in the Zoom chat. Let's go ahead and continue. I'll go ahead and share my screen again.
Meeting controls window. Quorum Studio 2.0. You have started screen share alert.
So at this point, we need to actually do some of the logic for our game. There is one other thing as well that we should probably consider doing, which I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to run my game and show it to you guys real quick.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ game window.
I'm moving my character up. I'm about to bump the NPC.
Quest giver.
I press the spacebar.
Stuff. Space.
He says my very, very helpful quest text, and all the items show up. And now, I'm going to press spacebar again.
Stuff. Space. Stuff. Space.
I just kind of keep talking to him, and in this case, that might not be a big deal, but we might want to consider doing something where we put a flag or something that says the first time you talk to him, he says something. Talking to him in the future, he maybe says something else, or he doesn't talk to you again until after you finish your quest. In this particular case, all I'm doing is just showing the boxes. Showing them again doesn't hurt anything. But if you were doing something special like talking to the quest giver spawns angry monsters you need to defeat or something, you probably don't want to talk to the quest giver more than once, or otherwise you're going to get attacked by a whole bunch of things. For right now, we'll leave that as is, but something to consider for your stuff. I would also say we had homework, not yesterday, but the day before. We will probably have homework this time. It's just to go get that say statement or whatever you end up using. It could be the speech object instead. Just fill that out with whatever you want your quest giver to actually say.
Close.
Right now,
Quorum Studio 2.0.
we want to interact with the chests or potions or swords or mushrooms or whatever else we want. Somehow we are interacting with our stuff. What should we do in order to do that? What do we have in the code that would allow us to interact with these things?
Depends how we want to do it. Go ahead.
Collisions, probably.
Yeah.
So collisions, what I'm thinking of, but that is
Collisions.
true. It does depend on how we want to do it. We could also like interact with these in the same way that we interact with the NPC. And actually, we just kind of saw how we would do that, right? With Sarah's code, we could go to each of the items, press space next to them, and pick them up that way.
Yeah.
But I think collisions the simpler way we could do it, and would also be totally reasonable. Which of those two ways you do is totally up to you. Or if you have something else in mind, I'm game for other stuff too.
I was wondering, do we need to make new collision events like for each individual item, or can we use this begin collision action that we have towards
So
the end?
we're just fine to use the begin collision action that we already have. The only thing that we're going to have to do is, as opposed to what we have right now, where it just uses the speech object to say the object's name, we need to do some extra work to figure out what we bumped into and maybe do something special depending on what it is. But we might not, right? If I bump into a tree, I don't really care about that other than just telling you that you bumped into a tree. If you bump into the item or the objective, I should probably tell you that in a special way, aside from just giving you its name, or play a sound or do something else. I'm also probably going to want to get rid of that particular item so that I am not able to just continuously keep running over it over and over and over again, right? So
now I could still put those other commands back in and get to somebody who tells me to go get those gems, correct?
yes, absolutely.
Those off.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can create the nested if instead of the if else if, that's conditional structure. And then if item, let's see, if item get name, well, no, if item get name column contains such and such, and then get into that's nested if, whatever it happens, the item
Totally.
hide or something like that on the end.
Yeah, that'll totally work. And I think that's exactly what we should do here. So for right now, I'm going to keep the speech call exactly where it is, and we're just going to say the name of the thing we run into every time. But we reasonably could change this to be like part of an else statement or something. For right now, I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm going to add a new if statement. And if
space
the item,
M.
and this is the item that we already found before, right? We checked to see if the first item was the player, the second item was the player, and whatever the other item was, we're storing that in a variable. I'm using that variable. I'm checking the other thing that we picked up. Does its name?
C N get name code tabs tab control. C1 integer 1 of.
Does its name contain?
Contains left paren number contains x comma number.
I think code completion is lying to me, and it's giving me the contains action from the item and not actually from text because those parameters don't look right. But
contains left paren number code tabs tab control main.quorum tab code edit tab.
In my case, the objectives that I care about are all called treasure chests.
Space.
Some variant thereof.
T quote right paren.
Again, this will be different based on whatever your objective is called.
D blank.
If this item is an objective that we care about, there's probably a couple of different things that we want to do. One of those things is we should probably get rid of it from the game, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just add some code to move.
Left. Right paren.
Now, there's one other thing that we should consider, which is that when we pick this up, aside from whatever stuff we might want to do to like play a sound or something to indicate that you've done it, we also want to consider how we actually proceed with the quest, right? It's one thing to pick up the item and make it go away, but we should probably do something to indicate that we're like progressing in some way, right? The most common way that you would do this for something like what is often known as a fetch quest, which is kind of what we're making here, this idea that you go pick up several things for me and bring them back. The most common way to do this is say, let's just keep a counter of how many of these things you picked up. And then when you hit the maximum, you can come back and you can talk to me again, right? So in my case, that's 4. There are 4 treasure chests, though I might actually end up changing that in the future. So even though I could just put that as part of like an if statement or something somewhere, I am going to go to the top of my file and I'm going to add 2 fields. One of these I'm going to call my objectives collected.
INTEGER space ECT
Integer objectives collected equals
0.
0. Again, you can name this anything you want. This is going to be a counter that has kept track of how many things you picked up. This could be potions collected or just like potion count. It could be something along the lines of mushrooms eaten or some abbreviation that's much shorter so you don't have to type all that out. Whatever you want is fine. The point is it's going to track how many of these things we picked up. I'm going to make one other field, and this is basically just for convenience. I could just type this number out in different places, but I might want to change this in the future. I am going to make a integer.
INTEGER space.
And I'm going to call this total objectives.
LOGECIVS space 4.
And in my case, this is 4. This value is going to be different for you depending on your game, because all this value is me keeping track of
Scene.qs tab. Scene.qs.
How many of these chests?
Treasure chest 1 1 of. Treasure chest 2 1 of 1. Treasure chest 3 1 of 1 Treasure chest 4 1 of 1
Literally all I'm doing, and I just have a number that keeps track of how many objectives I expect you to pick up in order to complete the quest. I say, you currently have picked up 0. I would like you to pick up 4. And as the game progresses, we're going to take that 0 value and we're just going to increment it to 1, to 2, then 3. And then when you get to 4, you're done.
Quorum Studio Code tabs tab control.
So does it make sense what the purpose behind these fields that I just made is?
Yep.
Okay. For the total objectives, should this be 4 on your game?
Mine should be
It depends.
3 potions.
Should be 3, yeah. It should be 4 only if you also have 4 things to pick up. If you have 3, then 3 is the correct answer, and etc.
So I'm going to compare, for instance, that potion count with my total objectives.
Yes.
We don't need to get into this too much, but what if your main objectives is to pick up one specific thing, but you do have other things in your game?
So if your objective is to pick up one specific thing, there's a couple of different ways we could do this, right? We could just say that you could do it exactly like I have it here, where you have these integers, and then you just say, I only increase the objectives collected if you got the one specific thing I care about. That you could do it that way. You could also just make a Boolean, right? It's just found the thing equals false. And then when you eventually find it, found the thing becomes true, right? That's another option.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, but however you want to do it is fine. For this, for right now, I am going to include in my begin collision, I remove the item whenever I run into it. I am also going to take my objectives collected value.
Space. Space.
And I'm just going to set its value to be equal to itself plus 1.
1.
Or in other words, I'm incrementing it. If this was something like Java or C++, I could hit it with like the ++ operator, which we don't have anything like that in Quorum because perhaps unsurprisingly, those do not test well when you study with novices. But all I'm doing is just saying, you have collected one more objective than you had before. Whatever your current value is, you have that plus 1 now. If you had 0, now you have picked up 1. If you had 1, you have now picked up 2.
Oh, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I'm trying to do my own thing here, and I was trying to create a player class with an inventory, so that you can open a chest, collect an item, put it into the inventory. And what is the collection for like a linked list?
It is libraries.containers.list.
Okay, it is a list. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So now that we have done this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run my code, double check to make sure it works. It's something that I pretty frequently just run my code and make sure
Build
that
successful in 0 EPIQ game window.
Working. I'm going to go talk to the NPC, go talk to the quest giver.
Stuff. Space.
Stuff appears. If I go run into these now.
Treasure chest 1.
So things appear to be disappearing as I pick
Treasure
them up.
chest 2.
I don't
How did
actually
you make
know.
them disappear?
The way that I am doing that, I'll go ahead and I'll show the code in this
Quorum Studio
environment here.
2.0.1 window. Remove left paren, item right paren, selected.
So if the item,
New notification from Slack, comma,
if
new
I
message in number
have the
epic dash
item, if
advanced,
it
comma,
is a
Andreas
treasure chest, I just remove the item using the remove action. That just gets it out of the game. It's out of here. It's gone.
Lowercase r or uppercase r?
Uppercase. This is a function.
Okay.
So camel case.
Should
Camel
we
case,
put the objectives collected just to make sure we know whether that count is actually going up?
Yeah, so actually that's a really good idea. I think that aside from
EPIQ
just
game,
like us, the
Quorum
programmers
Studio.
wanting to know it goes up, we should actually like let the player know that the objective has been going up. So what I'm going to do is if this item get name contains treasure chest, this if statement, I'm going to add an else to it.
Remove left paren.
And in here, I am going to take this say statement that we had from before, and I'm going to put it inside the else.
Right paren, select, and
And then I'm going to say something different to you if you pick up the treasure chest, so I can tell you what your objective is.
line feed.
So I'm going to, I'm making a speech object in two different places here. I can just put it up above the if statement, but that's okay. I'm going to get the speech.
Can block
and
left.
I am going to say
left paren. Code tab control. Main.quorum tab.
I need to say something here. I'm going to say, in my case, you could change it to something else. Collected treasure have
quote
plus objectives collected.
Quote quote right paren.
So
speech colon say left paren. Quote collected treasure dash you have quote plus objectives collected plus quote total quote right paren selected.
So I'm just saying if you pick up the treasure, you just collected treasure, you have so many total. I could add something special here too, where if maybe when you get to the target, I could even say something special saying, you found all of them, go talk to the quest giver again, right? Actually, I kind of think that I want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to say
speech colon say
I'm going to keep the speech up here.
line feed. Speech.
You do not have to do this portion if you don't want to, but I'm going to add it to mine. If
space.
The objectives collected is
space.
equal to the total objectives.
Or
whatever you
speech colon say line D.
Or sorry, this should
if object
be
B
less than
space equal less line. Select line feed. Speech colon say left line feed.
Sorry, I'm programming from the seat of my pants here. If else do that. Okay. So
if objectives collected less total objectives.
If the objectives collected are less than the total objectives, you haven't collected them all yet. So say
speech colon say left paren. Quote collected treasure dash you have quote plus objectives collected plus quote total quote right paren.
Otherwise, if you have not collected less than the total objectives, it's only going up, so you must have collected them all by now. I'm going to say speech say
code
collected all of the treasure return to the quest giver.
Quote right paren. S. Speech colon say left paren. Quote you tick VE collected all of the treasure, comma, return to the quest giver bang. Quote right paren.
It's pretty funny how it reads that text when I have the all punctuation turned on in NVDA. Makes sense though, it's doing its job. It's telling me about the punctuation this time. So I have now set up my game. I'm gonna go ahead and run this, make sure it does what I expect it to.
Build successful in 0. EPIQ game window.
I talk to the quest giver with the space.
Quest stuff.
He still says stuff. I need to change it to something better still. I go over, pick up a chest.
Collected treasure, you have 1 total.
I go over to the second.
Collected treasure, you have 2 total.
Third.
Collected treasure, you have 3 total.
And the fourth and last one.
You've collected all of the treasure. Return to the quest giver.
Okay. So at this point, I am actually doing something when I pick these things up. I am incrementing this counter so I know how close I am to done. And once I'm done, I have put myself in a position where nothing will happen yet if I return to the quest giver. We still need to go do that part. But that's the next step, is saying we have the information necessary to tell from the program the user is done with the quest. The player has finished whatever you told them to do. You can go do something else now by talking to the quest giver or whatever you want to do. Before I continue, does this make sense to everyone? Is everyone in the same position? Are people still catching up?
Yep.
Yeah. Still typing a little bit.
Maximum Quorum Studio.
so the, like as Steve said, that if you are just looking for a specific one, that's your if the nested if is going to be just if such and such a boolean equals true, and right?
Yeah. So do you have just one specific item in your game, or do you have like several different items?
Okay, several different items, but quest giver give you one item first, the other
Gotcha.
item next, and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, what you probably end up doing is the quest giver tells you whichever one that you need to go get first. You store that one in a variable somewhere and say, like, this is the current objective. It is this item, or it has this name. Store it in some way. And then in your if statement, you can just check to see, is this the one that you currently need right now? Or alternatively, you could do like if, else if, else if, else if, and then like have like a number that says you are on stage one. Stage one, I know that I need to go get this special item. And then later you go pick up that one. Okay, now you're on stage two because you've collected two of them. Now you need this one, and this the if statement checks to see if you are currently on two collected and this is the correct one for you to get next. Okay. Go do that.
Got it. Just about my understanding, just to kind of making sure that I'm understanding right about layer part.
Yeah.
So basically, that's a layer part. If you can show, scroll your screen to that point.
Yeah.
Let me explain so that I'm okay. So basically, layer to layer equals get current layer to D is going to bring that current layer that we are this program is looking at.
Yes.
And then the iterator equals layer get iterator means that actually that's this iterator, does iterator work like a array that's it's put everything item 2D on that layer into the array, kind of like that.
Yes, that it's doing the array and the iterator. You like talk to them in slightly different ways to get information about them, but that's totally what we're doing here. It's just it's a big container of all of the item 2Ds in it, and we're just talking to it in a different way to get those items back out.
Okay, and then so it's populated. This array is populated and repeat while that's iterator as far as it has next item, which usually does.
Yep.
And item iterator the next item next equal item equals iterator next. What does iterator next does?
So the way that the iterator works is you can imagine, like you're saying, how it's kind of like an array, right? Where you can imagine if we wanted to go through every single item in an array, what we would do is we have an array of like 10 elements, and we start by saying we have a counter and it equals 0, and then we repeat until the 0 equals the size of the array. So we've reached the last one. And then in the loop, we say, okay, get me the first object, and then get me the second object.
Okay.
All
it's
that next is doing,
that.
Yeah, the iterator it keeps track of its own counter inside of itself, basically. And then just anytime you say next, it says, okay, increase the counter by 1, give you that one.
Oh, I got you. So it's checking all the items inside of the array, and then if one of them contains such and such name, okay, I got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
I actually have a question, but I'm not certain. Sure. So I am currently trying to set another like interactable up where I can move the logs around, like I was talking about setting the responsiveness.
Sure.
I've got it to the point where it'll say you found a log, push it into position in the water to get the wizard staff, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Immediately upon completion of that, it's supposed to allow me to push the log by setting the physics to be responsive.
Yeah.
Instead, what's happening is that my player character disappears.
Okay,
and I don't know what happened.
What's going on. If you want to share your screen, I'm happy to.
Yeah, sure.
Because it sounds interesting.
Stop meeting.
Yeah, at this point, we have about 13 minutes left, so we could do a little bit more on this, but this is going to be...
All right, so I added in vector2 log position and then added some code for that just to make that happen. So here's the lines of code that I'm interested in, I think. It says if distance log less than 40, and then does the exact same thing as if we walk up to our quest giver, except that it's supposed to set the responsiveness instead of cause our items to appear. So I've got my thing, and I go up to the log, and it says log when I run into it.
Log.
Which is great.
You found a log. Push it into position in the water to get the wizard staff.
And then I disappear, and my character's gone. And I'm moving my keys around, and I can't find them, and I don't really know what happened.
Okay, so go ahead and close this. Let's look at your code.
I can turn on NVDA as well.
Yeah, if you want to do that, just so that everybody can hear what we're debugging together here.
Quorum Studio 2.0.1 window. If logs get name, contains, log. Log set responsive, / currently causing my player character to disappear.
Well, that log there is definitely not gonna.
Yeah, the logs are.
When you say item 2D logs, you're actually creating a new object.
Yeah.
I say you found a log. Item 2D logs.
Right.
It's actually not setting the item in the game's responsiveness. I don't know why your character's disappearing, but I mean, I haven't thought about that yet, but that definitely isn't the actual log that I think you're thinking of.
Right. Okay, I was trying to define item 2D log.
L selected, O selected, G selected, S selected.
For that, and that it would
logs unselected, L selected, O selected, G selected, quote selected, scene.qs tab, log 1 of 1, 512, log 1 of 1, 448.0, 160.
So it looks like you
code tabs tab control,
have
main.code tab, code edit text box.
A variable up above that stores that log, but the logs that you're using there is a brand new item. It's not the same one, right?
Okay.
So like I can see on like line 115 that log position set, and you're giving it a log, right?
Yeah.
And that's a thing. And then on 131, you have this new item. You're making a brand new variable, and you're not telling it what it is. So it's making a new one.
I don't necessarily
selected,
need this,
L selected,
right?
D selected.
Yeah, I would just use log.
M selected, T selected, line feed.
Just use what you got.
O, G.
Well, I don't necessarily need
L,
that because I think it's
space.
already defined up above.
Yeah, you could just use the one you've already defined.
Okay, so let's see if it is.
As far as the other issue where your character is disappearing, I have a hunch.
Out of spelling error. L. L
Go ahead and
unselected.
comment out your two say commands, and then I think what's happening is that you might still have linear velocity applied on your character when you're doing it, and then when it finally stops blocking the code, it processes about like 5 or 10 seconds worth of physics, and then just shoots your character way off the screen.
Okay.
So,
Well,
and we're going to see if that's
I've
true.
commented that one out.
Yeah.
You said to comment the second one out. I don't know that there's any.
Yeah, I saw the other say up above. That's something different. That's not the same thing. So
Yeah, this is
that one's
functioning
fine,
just fine. This is based on what we already discussed.
Yeah.
.qs tab. Scene.qs grass 2, 400. Build successful in 0.05. EPIQ game window. Log. Space. Space. Log.
Oh, well, it activated it.
Log.
Okay.
Yep. So
Space.
I think you're gonna have to write some code separately for each of those logs because it looks like you're only doing that one log right now.
Right.
But or you're calculating the distance to each of the logs in a different way.
Log.
It shouldn't be. It should be all
Edit.
calculating
Close.
it the same way.
Quorum Studio 2. Main.quorum tab.
But there are multiple logs and only one. So I've got.
From Andreas Stevik to everyone. We will be joining back to the main room in just a few minutes for a wrap up. Alert.
So like
0
this log is
selected.
based
4 selected.
on.
Equals selected. And slog less equals 40 unselected.
Yeah.
Low selected.
You'll probably want to do like get each of those separate logs into its own variable and then use the code for each one. Or you could alternatively do what we've been
Meeting
doing
alert.
where we like check every item in there and then like if this one is a log, then do it for this specific one right then and there if you wanted to write the loop.
Okay, so just have basically multiple nested if statements like what I've already got written.
Yeah, that would work too.
For each
Yep.
individually. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then your say statement, I'm not sure exactly why. I would probably end up making that just a speech and use the speech to make the say instead
Okay,
of
instead of
blocking
just using
anyway.
a say statement.
But yeah. Because it looks like it was responding to calculating like a lot of physics all at once, and that's why you ended up like shooting off the screen probably.
Really quick, what's that method
That's a
for
little
that action?
What was that, Tim?
Oh, what's that action for game get layer 2D?
It's get current layer 2D.
Oh, get current layer 2.
Yeah, it's a little unintuitive, but the reason for that is because you can actually have multiple layers at a time, and you can select one as sort of your primary one that you're working with right now, which is what the scene uses.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and you could do stuff like I mentioned before. You can use it to like make parallax motion with the 2D scenes, or you could also use it to like put a HUD on top of your game visually.
Mm-hmm.
It's primarily visual in nature. I can't think of a good reason why you would use it in terms of like an audio game.
Right. I mean, what if you wanted multiple maps? So if you wanted to like link 2 maps together.
You could do something like that where you have different scenes on different layers that represent different levels.
Right. Although it seems like loading multiple maps like all into the game at once seems not very efficient. If you have like, I don't know, 100 different maps.
Yeah,
like,
you would have to worry about performance if you were loading too many.
Yeah.
The other thing you might use it for is every once in a while you want part of your game to not have any connection to physics at all, and you can make that in another layer, and it can have its own magical physics properties. So, for example, you could have gravity in one layer and no gravity in the other, or stuff like that.
Oh, interesting.
Now, why would you want that in a game? I don't know. If you just did, like, you know.
No, a space simulation.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm looking at the screen you're sharing here, Sarah, and I'm not seeing anything that looks wrong with that. If you click the build button, does it actually build, or does it give you errors?
I didn't try that because I was trying to figure out where the error was.
Yeah. Because it looks correct to me. I know it does say something. Oh, is there an if? There's just an end statement. Is there an end missing?
Oh, there's a at the if there's nothing there.
Yeah, instead of else if, just remove the if. It should just be else. The one below it.
Oh.
Not that one. Sorry, the other else if, a couple lines below it.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, because there's nothing that comes after it. Duh.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Do I have some problem where Quorum keeps crashing as I'm like working through trying to like work through all the bugs I have? And apparently I have too many. And
I had the same problem.
where I'm like, I'll go into I'll do a control 4, go over to the errors tab, select on something, maybe fix it, and then I'll rebuild, control R, and do a control F4. And when I do a control F4 again, every now and then it's not consistent. It crashes.
Do you have a stack trace or anything?
I think I'm actually running in the command line. Yes.
Yeah, feel free to toss that on Slack, and I'll take.
We will gladly take stack traces.
Seriously, yeah, because the hardest part about any of this stuff is always figuring out like exactly how do I reproduce this thing that someone ran into, right?
Right. I get that.
Yeah.
Oh, nope, I wasn't running it
Overlapping
that
trees.
time. And
Water 2. Tree base. Trees 2. Water. Overlapping trees 2. Tree base. Overlapping trees 2.
I put in the 60-second warning just so that we
Water
don't have anybody.
Overlapping trees 2. Water 3. Water 3.
Right, so the breakout room is about to close. At this point, the only homework that you guys have is that say that we use whenever you go talk to the quest giver. If you have a quest giver that's doing something like that in your game, make sure you have that filled out if you don't have it already, just because I don't think we want to spend the time in the session to go and do that later. And it's really just like, that's a you personalizing your game thing. Otherwise, I think tomorrow the goal is going to be to add music and sound effects to the game, along with some other sort of just feedback from doing stuff.